Madam Clerk, I see it's 4:02. Do we have everyone that we're expecting at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Councillor Bray and Councillor Woods in the council chamber. We have Councillor Nash online on the phone. And I don't believe Councillor Lamb has joined us. He did indicate he would likely be about a half hour late.
Okay, and I see that we have our planner, Mr. Jackson, and we have Dave Creaser, our
That's correct.
Manager of Public Works are on. So if we're not expecting anybody, we're not waiting for anybody other than Councillor Lamb, I think we'll start the meeting. I'll call it to order. And if I could ask you to play our national anthem to start, please. The municipality of Whitestone recognizes all of Canada resides on traditional, unceded and/or treaty lands of the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We recognize our municipality on the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory is home to many past, present, and future Indigenous families. This acknowledgement of the land is a declaration of our commitment and collective responsibility to reconcile the past and to honor and value the culture, history, and relationships we have with one another. Thank you. I'll now ask if any member of council has a pecuniary interest they wish to declare. All right, then we'll let the record show that there was no pecuniary interest declared. Next, I would ask for a motion, mover and seconder for this motion, whereas the members of council have been presented with an agenda for the meeting, be it resolved that the agenda for this meeting be adopted as presented.
I'll first that, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Nash.
Thank you. By Councillor Nash, seconded by
Councillor Woods has his hand up.
okay, so thank you. Seconded by Councillor Woods. Any discussion?
If I might, through you.
Go ahead, Councillor Nash.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off. Was somebody else speaking first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Through you then, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. I guess as the clerk had mentioned in our meeting yesterday, I guess because there are some people both in the public and council members on the call digitally today, I would assume that we'll be taking recorded votes for everything. But just my quick comment is really, I was just wondering, and more of it is a procedure, so apologize in advance. But I know in the past, whenever the presiding officer, when the mayor has been absent from a meeting in person, that it's always been handed over the chair position to somebody who's present in the meeting. And I understand the deputy mayor also isn't in attendance at the meeting today, unfortunately. So I was just wondering, under past presidents, both in this council and last council, whenever somebody's been absent who is chairing a meeting, it's always been chaired by somebody that's sitting in the room so that members of the public can see the person chairing. So I'm just wondering why, I know it's not written in our procedural bylaw yet, but why we aren't following that precedence that's always been done in the past, having either Councillor Bray or Councillor Woods the opportunity to chair the meeting. So just wondering what's changed, why that, I'll call it almost policy from the past, isn't being followed today with the opportunity for them to chair the meeting.
Okay, well, you asked two questions. The answer to your first question is yes, we will be taking recorded votes during the meeting, during this meeting, because there are two people participating remotely, and we are expecting Councillor Lamb to join us when he becomes available shortly. So there will be three people participating remotely. The reason decided to do that is simply not, it was because it was a last minute thing. My intention originally was to be present in the meeting today and to chair it from from the community center. However, something came up fairly recently, as in yesterday, which caused me to have to remain in Toronto. So I didn't think it was sufficient notice to ask someone else to chair the meeting on short notice, and to give them an opportunity to become familiar with what they have to do when they're chairing from the front of the meeting room. So I did discuss it with the clerk, and one of the options we considered was turning the whole meeting into a Zoom meeting, which I think would have worked all right. I'm not aware that there's anyone else in the room there, but with the people in the community center other than the two councillors. But just because it was announced publicly as being that the meeting would take place in the community center, we decided to leave the meeting there. So this is the arrangement that's been made, and perhaps if the situation happens another time and we have a little more notice that it's going to happen, then maybe we can invite someone else to do it. It just seemed like the best thing to do given the timing. So could I call the question, please, or ask the clerk to call the question on the agenda so we can proceed?
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Motion is carried.
All right, thank you. So our next item, the next items of business that we have are planning items, and so I'm going to ask for a motion to move into committee of the whole, so we can receive these three items.
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nash, seconded by.
Councillor Bray, I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Once again, I'll ask for the vote to be recorded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we are moving into that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone move into the Committee of the Whole at 4:11 p.m. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. We have three reports here. And we have with us our planning consultant, John Jackson. Who's, well, I guess he can speak to any of them perhaps, but let's start with item 5.1, which was his report on environmental protection zones. John, would you like to kick that one off, please? Do you have any
Thank
introductory
you.
remarks?
Thank you, Your Worship. This issue actually goes back to a specific incident on a specific property, but I'd like to qualify the fact that it's a matter that really applies to the whole of the municipality in terms of its zoning of environmental protection zones. And the reason I'm tying it in my background to the issue of environmental protection zones is it's perhaps the example that can most easily express the kind of issues around the EP zone. So just to be sure, this background is related to a incident at the Lorimer Lake Resort, but it's not about Lorimer Lake Resort per se, as much as it is the problem of how zoning evolved in the municipality with respect to what were commonly referred to as environmental protection zones, which mean wetlands, fish habitat, and some wildlife identified as significant or critical habitat. So what we discovered is that in the case of the Lorimer Lake Resort property, there was an area that was a flooded area created by beaver dams over the years. And in an earlier rendition of the zoning bylaw, that beaver dam or flooded area was zoned environmental protection. And the reason that it was zoned environmental protection was many, many years ago, I had done an air photo interpretation assessment of wetlands on properties in the 80s, and that property showed up as having some high water or flooded lands that were created by this beaver dam. And so that property had been identified as partially zoned environmental protection at that stage. And so that the earliest bylaw for the municipality of Whitestone, it contained this EP area reflecting that flooded beaver dam. We moved along the, I'll call it the technological scale, where we relied more on electronic data that was synthesized from a number of sources. And those sources didn't necessarily include John Jackson's air photo interpretation. They relied on data provided by mostly provincial agencies in terms of the kinds of heritage features, whether they were significant wetlands, environmental habitats reflecting fish habitats, or critical wildlife habitats. And consequently, that new and improved data actually dropped John Jackson's more, I'll call it hands-on physical creation. And all of a sudden, that type of wetland that was recorded as environmentally protected on the Lorimer Lake property disappeared. And so the whole of the land became zoned commercial. And the owner, and I'm thinking about 2 years ago, the new owner had actually removed the dam, physically removed it. And so it created the loss of that wetland to the extent that it was quite noticeable. In fact, some lake residents expressed concern that there was potentially some significant adverse impact on things like the lake water quality and the environment generally because of the removal of the flooded lands. It turned out that none of the agencies who have stewardship of things like fish habitat, being the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the Ministry of Natural Resources, who had control over significant wetlands, or the Ministry of Environment that manages habitat for threatened and endangered species, really had expressed any concern with what the landowner had done, despite the concerns expressed by neighbors who were aware of this removal of the beaver dam at that location. And again, it's not about the Lorimer Lake story as much as it is how the environmental protection zones that were originally my creation didn't get advanced to the new data that was imposed more electronically through the transformation of the information from other levels of government, whether it was DFO, MNR, or MOE, so that there are a large number of what I'll call local type wetlands that were in the original bylaw for the municipality of Whitestone that now were removed. And what we were asked to do was try to answer the question about how that happened and what the significance was, and should the municipality actually do anything to address those kinds of site alterations that may or may not have a consequence in terms of environmental impact. And so what I've described in this little report is what actually took place, how it took place, and if we decide that these more local wetlands that I identified have any value, what we should possibly do. In this case, it would appear that if we as a municipality feel we want to be a steward of environmental attributes for these localized wetlands, that the only way we could really, I suppose, gain jurisdiction is that we would want to or need to adopt at least a fill bylaw or a site alteration bylaw to give us the jurisdiction or the mandate to require control if someone chose to modify these local wetlands that I would have put in place, have since removed. And also we would need to perhaps put them back into the program if we thought that was a choice or a jurisdiction council wanted to obtain. And so if you wanted as a council to enjoy those kinds of controls, other municipalities are ramping up an interest in fill bylaws or site alteration bylaws, both under the Municipal Act, to gain that kind of jurisdiction. So we looked at a number of municipalities who seem to be adding these kinds of legislative controls to their toolbox. But there's an associated or an attendant cost to these types of new regulations that council needs to be aware of. And those are pretty obvious, that if you're issuing permits for fill or site alteration, you're taking resources of the municipality and diverting them either to the administration of those new controls, or you're creating a new job, if you like, for municipal purposes to be able to properly regulate and administer those fill bylaws or site alteration bylaws. But it does appear that, given my review of some of the area municipalities, they're getting into that business, if I could describe it that way. So the two questions that council needs to address is, do you think that we need to put those old Jackson local environmental protection zones back? And secondly, do you believe that we should look forward to site alteration legislation or filling legislation to be able to regulate those at the municipal level? It was quite clear in the sample of in the example of the Lorimer Lake Resort that those concerns were not significant enough on the local wetland that was removed to cause their legislation to be triggered. So in those cases, they're obviously looking at the context and the individual circumstances, but there are not always going to be those agencies jumping in to believe that they have any interest in some of the modifications of what I'll call local wetlands. So we were asked, and we have brought forward those two questions to council, your worship. So we're looking for direction. I would think that it would be something that you would want to have moved forward on the basis of having a committee of the municipality, a councillor, building department, and the planning department have a closer examination of such bylaws with a recommendation to come out of such a process. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that summary of your report, John. I'll open it up to questions from councilors.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, Councillor Woods.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. John, how many of the local wetlands do you think were actually removed from the list? Maybe like 50 or 100 or
I'd say several hundred.
several hundred?
Are you talking just in Whitestone, or are you talking? The whole
Yeah, just in
West Bay Sound?
Whitestone.
Just in Whitestone.
Okay.
So anything that showed up on an aerial interpretation, and everyone knows our landscape is generally either field, rock, or swamp. So I don't think I'm exaggerating.
Yep. So another one I wanted to ask you, or somebody could figure it out maybe. How much of a cost do you think it would cost the municipality to set up and enforce a site alteration bylaw and a fill bylaw?
Well, you'd probably set the bylaw up similar to a sister municipality, so there wouldn't be a big cost there. But I don't think I'd be underestimating the need for probably almost a dedicated person to administer these kinds of permissions and reviews. So you'd be looking at an individual and perhaps that individual's salary of $50,000 to $60,000.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you another question. I highlighted something in here from an old report. Let's see, it was agenda date, June 7, 2022. In our package, I think starts page 15 of 219. On 17 of 219, there's a statement in here that talks about overall benefit permit for the Endangered Species Act coming from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. That email was dated May 9th, 2022. How does that work? I'll read you the sentence, John, if you don't have it right in front of you. When avoidance of impacts to species at risk is not possible, an authorization may be sought in the form of an overall benefit permit to ensure beneficial actions are completed to provide a benefit to species impacted.
So the way that the endangered species works is it's not to be a sterilizing kind of piece of legislation. It says that if you are going to adversely impact habitat for a threatened or endangered species, you can do that by permit, but the permit will only issue if you actually end up with an overall benefit for that particular species. As an example, let's say that you were going to place a road or a building on, you were going to place a building or a road or some structure on 10,000 square feet of barren rock. That overall benefit would allow that to happen if you were to place an equivalent or greater amount of barren rock on the property where you were adversely impacting the habitat. So I've seen projects I've been involved with where we had to, we built a road across a rock barren, and we had to take that several thousand square feet of rock barren and create it at another location. So, and able to get the permit, we had to create an overall benefit. And that was to replace the lost rock barren with a greater area of rock barren.
Did that answer your question? Okay, are there other questions?
If I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, I have several questions and a couple comments, if I might.
Okay, well, I'll just ask that you do them one at a time if you don't mind, and give them a chance to answer each one.
No
Go ahead,
problem. But
Councillor.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in following up to Councillor Wood's question there, if I'm correct, permitting, when I say, is already in place, like for endangered species, you have to do a self-assessment, and if there's evidence that there's endangered species there, you have to go through the proper procedures, if I'm correct, right, John?
Correct.
Okay. And secondly, if I'm correct, in our official plan, we already speak to, under section 13, if we're doing buildings and stuff like that, about installing sediment fence prior to construction under 13.04.8, if I'm correct, as I'm looking at it now.
Right.
So when I look at those things, I guess, and you say it might cost $60,000 to have somebody to monitor this, I look at it and say, I think when it comes to cutting of trees, for example, you can't do it during my migratory bird season, as there's already provincial and federal laws in place for that. There's a lot of federal and provincial laws for if you're going to do any damage to endangered species, i.e. the self-assessment. And when I look at this and say, do we want to do a fill bylaw or not a fill bylaw? And I think of how much money it's going to cost, and you might look at somebody that has a beaver dam, And, some people might say that beaver dam was created by a nuisance beaver, which destroyed the land. And you'll have other members of the public that'll say that's a perfectly preserved wetland, right? So I think there'll be a lot of arguments on what's a wetland, what's not a wetland. And I think we could get ourselves into a lot of back and forth on what is a wetland and what's not a wetland. So my question to that part is, if I'm correct, under the provincial or federal mandate, there is no significant wetlands considered by the ministry, Ontario, or federal in the municipality of Whitestone. Am I correct on that?
At this time, there are none.
Okay. So with that all being said, I was looking up, I know in your report, you'd mentioned that a couple municipalities did have some bylaws. And I looked up one of them, and I noticed in one of them, it gave a definition of fill. And it said means any type of material deposited or placed on lands and includes, but is not limited to sand, soil, stone, gravel, material, concrete, either singular or in combination. I sit here and go, I think you'd be correct that we'd have to have somebody full-time. You're going to put some gravel down to grade a road, you're adding fill. You're going to put sand down to do something, that's fill. You're putting soil or clay down, it's fill. And then is it contaminated fill? Is it clean fill? We get into so many things. I know a little bit about this just through my work. And I sit here and go, I think for the most part, a lot of people do the right thing. And I think in the case, which I'm just going to say, I think, unfortunately, we shouldn't have used an example of somebody's property, which we did, but I know there was a reason to do that. But in that instance, there was nothing found to be done wrong whatsoever by all the agencies that came out. And I think that's what we're going to find. Even if we did a fill bylaw, people are going to challenge it. And I think a lot of the time, if it's a beaver that has flooded an area and it's backlogged, somebody's going to come and say that's not a significant wetland. So I wouldn't really be in support at this time of a fill bylaw, just because I don't think we need it, or a site altering bylaw. But I do think we can, maybe, remind residents when they're applying for a building permit or doing work that there's already items in place for things such as constructing sediment fence, not cutting trees down at the shoreline, cutting trees down at the right times of year. I think there's a lot of things in place in our bylaws and official plans that sometimes we just need to remind residents of. So I wouldn't be in favor of this time of doing anything with the fill bylaw. I think it's just too much work. And we wouldn't get much out of it. And I think it's really meant for much bigger municipalities like Toronto or Vaughan, where there is not very much, I'll call it wetlands left, be it a valley of a stream or in a farmer's field where there's an old creek running through, those types of things. And that's where they really get into what should we do. Not in the instances where, as you said, the landscape's either made up of rock, I think rock, trees, water, or swamp, or flooded land, right? It's really just the demographics of what we have up there. So sorry to go on so long, but I just, those are my comments anyways. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there other comments? Well, I'll just ask a question while we're waiting, I guess. If we had a local conservation authority, let's say for the Magneto watershed or whatever, am I right in assuming that that this sort of thing would be part of their responsibility and not the municipalities on the watershed? Is that?
It's not quite that simple in the north. If I could just contrast the south, the conservation authorities do more like MNRF type work where it's all encompassing. So they look at things like fish and wildlife habitat, and they look at protected species, kind of all in one mandate. In the north, it's pretty much restricted to floodplain protection, with the oddity that they're also given septic permit authority, which is just kind of an oddball for our area, but there are a few such units in the north. So they're more M&R like, say from Simcoe County South. In the north, they tend to be mostly a flood protection agency, so they don't get into the habitat issues of wildlife so much. So they're quite distinctive functions. And even in the south, the mandates are being shrunken by the Ford government to look at principally floodplain protection, because they've expanded their mandates to an extent that there's concerns about their interference with development entitlements. So it's a little bit different province-wide. Whereas M&R's job in our area is responsible for provincially significant wetlands. They are the ones that actually create them or approve of them if someone else tries to create them, not the conservation authorities.
Mr.
Okay,
Mayor, I'm
next.
going to jump in here for a minute. We may be
Yeah.
having a sound issue with Councillor Wood's microphone. So if we could just do a test. I'm not
Go
sure
ahead.
that you've been able to hear him. Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
Hello, can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I can.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. We weren't sure. There was, he
Yeah.
was talking at one point and didn't finish his thought. So I'll leave it.
Oh.
I'll turn the meeting back to you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'm sorry, I will give them an opportunity to do that. I guess, and I mean, I don't think we're going to decide this matter today in any sense. It's, I think that the concern that various people had, and it's happened a couple of times, you know, in the last few years, where there has been a concern that somebody would be doing something to what the public perceive as a wetland, and it is pretty clear that the Ministry of that neither MECP nor M&R nor Fisheries and Oceans nor anybody else, any of the other levels of government. Yeah, they have rules out there and they have things that they are supposed to regulate, but for all intents and purposes, they don't. And it's either because they don't have the resources to do it, or because, you know, they you know, they don't, there isn't this, you know, I mean, I'm talking about staff resources. So I guess to Councillor Nash's point, if they don't have the resources to do it, the province of Ontario and the government of Canada don't have the resources to do it, then you know, you sort of wonder if the municipality of Whitestone is going to get the resources to do it. But you know, even, and it's a very broad thing, like the whole issue of water quality is not, I mean, there's supposed to be some regulation around it, but there's not very much. And so I can see this issue coming up. I don't know, I guess we would have to figure out how we would, if we were going to do something, I guess we'd have to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And maybe there's an opportunity to you know, when people, if you make a rule that people have to comply to get a permit to do something, then you can charge them for the permit, so that you can, or at least defray to the person who wants to change something the responsibility for going and getting a permit. But or going and getting an environmental assessment of some kind to to substantiate what they want to do, but because I see more that happening more and more often. But I guess, you know, that's really the question that we're, you know, and I mean, you can ask, I don't suppose anybody can answer it, but if we had a site alteration bylaw of some sort, or a fill bylaw, whether any of the situations that we're familiar with where somebody just went ahead and said, no, I'm gonna break this beaver dam and let this water out of here. Which, you know, this happens from time to time, or drain the swamp, whatever terminology you want, and use it for farmland or use it for something else. You know, what would the outcome? Would the outcome come at the end of the day if we had a permitting in place, if that would change anything? So that's a sort of a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting an answer, unless you have a thought on that. I just know that there's a general perception out there, and I've got to be honest, I share it, that the rules that do exist are not being enforced by anybody.
Message. So
I think Councillor Lamb is joining us. It sounds like.
I might be able,
Yes, I can see your phone number. Thank
I
you.
might just follow up your observation there, and I certainly have been around this block many times, and the provincial application of the regulations is very inconsistent, whether it's resources or whether they choose battles in some areas and others. Does seem to provide a fair amount of inconsistency. I have been involved in municipalities that have fill and site alteration bylaws, and one of the standard approaches is to say you cannot alter an EP zone without a permit. In some of those cases, I've gone on behalf of property owners to have environmental assessments done, and the municipal council has, despite having reports that supported the alteration or filling of the wetland, denied such requests. So it really just depends on the circumstances, whether they're enforced by agencies that have that jurisdiction, or whether the municipality has dug its heels in and decides that it, on its own right, will determine whether or not an alteration should or shouldn't occur, where it's assumed that jurisdiction. So my examples are all over the map, and can't really help you, except you have to look at these on an individual basis.
Okay, well, thank you. Councillor Woods, were you trying to ask some more or say some more, and you lost audio there? You know what? I think he has, Madam Clerk, I think he has disappeared from the list here, if I'm not mistaken. I wondered if, while we're waiting perhaps for him to come back, if either Councillor Bray or Councillor Lamb had any, Councillor Lamb, I guess you didn't hear the introduction to this, but I'm sure you've seen the report. If either of you had any comments or questions you wanted to make, wanted to pose to Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Mayor, if I may jump in. Councillor Woods was speaking. He is here in the room. Were you unable to hear him?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I was looking in the wrong place. If he said something a minute ago, I didn't hear it.
Okay, well, let's give him another microphone here.
I didn't hear it either.
Can either one of you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
Okay, I just got my mouth real close to the mic here. What I was trying to ask was if we did institute or decide one day to institute a fill bylaw or site alteration bylaw, in what way could that impact our municipal works crew when we're trying to do work around the municipality? Because I know many instances we're doing work, close to a wetland or a real damp area, and there would be, I mean, you can see them, species at risk all over this municipality if you really start looking. One that comes to mind all the time is the Massasauga rattlesnake. You go up and down the bunny trail any day in July and you can literally pick them up off the road. There's so many of them. And if we're doing work and we have these new rules, how is that going to impact us as a municipality? That was the first one.
Well, there's an interesting, I think, recent example where our new member of provincial parliament was given the post of Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, and the former role of Mr. Graydon Smith was the mayor of Bracebridge, and they had charged him under the Endangered Species Act because as mayor, he was having roads graded that were adjacent to wetlands, which were deemed to be habitat for a variety of threatened and endangered species. So the answer to your question is that we're all potentially vulnerable at any time. Now, as it turned out, the charges were dismissed and removed, but your concern is quite valid.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if Councillor Bray has any questions, but if she does not have any questions, I just have one quick follow-up question for John, but I'd ask if Councillor Bray had any questions first, because I can't see her, obviously.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'll give her an opportunity if she wants to ask anything.
Mr. Mayor, what we're seeing in the room here is Mr. or Councillor Woods has one more question.
All right.
And Councillor Bray has indicated she has no questions.
Okay.
And I do have a question for Councillor Nash, and this is just in terms of the sound. We're trying out a new system here, which I think is working, but maybe a few tweaks are needed. Councillor Nash, are you able to hear Councillor Woods?
Have him say something and I'll let you know. I could.
Okay, here he goes.
Can you hear me now, Councillor
Yep,
Nash?
I can hear him just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
One quick question.
And I can hear everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb.
Just that discussion that you, Mr. Mayor, and John Jackson were having a couple of minutes ago there, a question popped into my head. John, so if I own a tract of land and I have a large beaver pond or what I would consider a large wetland on my property, would I, as an individual, be able to go to the ministry and have something done to, have it considered to be a provincially significant wetland in order to protect it?
You could, and that's sort of a very risk-oriented part of the legislation, because a provincially significant wetland is done through an evaluation system that is based on observations. For example, if there is a species that would be on the list of threatened and endangered species, let's say a Blanding's turtle, which is fairly common, that automatically takes that wetland and qualifies it as a provincially significant wetland. So whenever you have a species that's in an area, whether it's a beaver pond or whether it's some other kind of wetland or some other kind of habitat that shows to have housed a certain species, then it's automatically a PSW. It still has to be rated and identified and named by the MNRF, but that's how easy it is to end up with a PSW. It just so happens that none of that process has ever occurred in our municipality in Whitestone. Then you have counter or conflicting legislation that says that if private property is being damaged by what is typically referred to as nuisance beaver, a private property owner has the right to remove that nuisance beaver or their colonies. So you've got that somewhat conflicting, call it an osprey flying along with an eastern hognose snake in its talons. Who's at fault? It's a bizarre kind of program, but it could expose all kinds of difficulties with administering these things.
Okay, thanks, John.
So, Councillor Lamb, before we move on to the next item, Councillor Lamb, did you have any comments or questions about this particular one?
Yeah, I don't, I guess I guess there won't be any motions coming out of this. I guess Councillor Woods and I and Mayor Comrie were part of this last fall. Earlier than that, when of course the thing over at Lorimer Lake occurred and all the agencies were in, and as far as I could determine, they didn't get charged with anything. I think they had put some silt screening up. They had literally kind of gotten rid of a beaver dam, and then the whole story of, there used to be other wetlands, and then we got rid of those and only put provincially significant ones in. I guess generally feeling, my questions would surround, what this would cost us to administer. And secondly, whether we have the resources. We have an awful lot on our plate of outstanding bylaws and issues. And to me, this is one that's down the ladder a little bit, right? I don't see the need personally. I guess I could be convinced, but I don't see the need for a fill bylaw or a site alteration bylaw. All I do is add another layer of complexity onto 4 or 5 other agencies, whether they be the Oceans and Fisheries or the environmental people or whatever. So I guess my conclusion, based on the knowledge I have, is I think this. I don't think we should go down. I believe strongly in property rights, and I think there's existing legislation that is more than adequate to cover situations in Whitestone. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's, I guess, my general comments, and I, of course, missed the first part of it. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Good discussion. I guess when we come out of committee of the whole, we'll get there will be a motion to receive the report for information, and if anyone wishes, we can, if any councillor wishes, we can have a motion to do something else, investigate it further or whatever. But if there's nothing else, I guess I'd like to suggest we move on to item 5.2, which is this report on the an application by Salvatore and others to close and purchase a section of road allowance. This is off it's off Highway 520, right in the village of Whitestone, or the whether the hamlet of Whitestone is, I guess. So I don't know if our planner is going to speak to this, or if our CAO is going to speak to this, but did you want to start, Madam CAO?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our planning assistant wasn't available tonight. She did write the memo, but I will speak to it. And I'll just briefly go over the history of this. This was an application received early last year, and it was delayed, unfortunately, at our end at the office. It eventually got through to John Jackson in early April for a report. And the reason these folks would like to purchase a piece of the road allowance is they have an agreement with the municipality, and in order to cross over that road allowance, and they had to do a few improvements to the road allowance to make that accessible. But from Highway 520, they do have a right-of-way and deeded access, and they just needed access to their landlocked property. So that was all worked out back in, I think, 2017. And they have been purchasing insurance ever since. And the thought was, if they didn't have to purchase insurance yearly, which apparently is expensive, they would like to purchase the concession road allowance. So notwithstanding the delay, it ended up with council, and council sort of generally approved in principle, and then directed staff to reach out to the public and the adjacent property owners. The property owners reached out to the municipality and had issues with cutting off the road allowance. And it's, if you look at page, I'll tell you, page, I guess it's attachment C. I'm not sure what page it is. Be page 50, I believe, page 50. You can see the unusual offset of the right-of-way, and how the adjacent property owners abutting the concession road allowance there's been an indication in interest, which would in fact somewhat block the intention of this proposed concession road allowance purchase. I do understand that it hasn't been a particularly good experience for the folks that own the property. And as council knows, they may not know this, but they have two options: simply to sell them the road allowance as they had requested, which wouldn't address abutting property owners who also have interest, or to simply have a refund of their $2,000. They were given a $500 refund. The costs for the planner were, which was half of the administrative fee. The planning costs were just over $1,000 to address this issue. I think these folks would be happy with a full refund of all their monies, and we will be able to release them from the need for insurance because they don't intend to do any more work on the road allowance and simply cross over it from time to time to access their hunt camp. So I think that's it in a nutshell, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there, Mr. Jackson, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think Michelle's captured the background quite completely and correctly. Thank you.
Okay. Questions?
George, maybe, or Mr. Mayor, maybe it's just me. I'm finding it a little difficult when you speak. So I don't know whether you need to speak more into the mic or.
Okay, can you hear me now all right?
Yeah, I can hear you better. Thank you.
Okay.
And if I might, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask a couple questions or say a couple comments, if nobody else said perfect.
Go ahead.
So hopefully, I guess at the end of the day, hopefully this can come to a resolution this evening. I know it's been a long journey for everybody, staff and the applicant. As the CAO had said, I think about 15 months ago, that this first started back in January of 2022 before I was a member of council. And as the CAO had said, I understood that because of the liability insurance, however it worked, there was an idea of purchasing the road allowance. And for whatever reasons, over time, I think it was decided, and I know council's received some communications from the applicants. And back in February, I know it was noted by staff that it said if no further work is required on the road allowance, you would not need to carry insurance, and agreement is no longer necessary. the road allowance is a public highway available to be utilized by the public. So with that being said, and understanding that I don't think they're really doing any more ongoing improvements to it more than anybody else would on any other road allowance that crosses any private roads or cottage roads or seasonal roads. I think the easiest thing to do, which is what the CAO suggested, would simply be to offer them a full refund back. I don't think it was anybody's fault. I think, you know, at the time it was an idea to buy the whole, or to, you know, they could buy the road allowance was a way of solving an insurance issue. And upon some investigation, I guess it would appear now that insurance isn't needed, and as such, they wouldn't need to buy the road allowance, and understanding that the owners to the east and the west would also like to buy it. And the applicants on this one are to the south. I just see that as you can't really sell the road allowance to anybody because there's 3 different parties that would like to buy it. So therefore you don't sell it to anybody, give them their $2,000 back and simply move on. And I think they already have an email from staff saying they don't need insurance. And I think the matter can be completed today. So I think we could bring a motion forward instead of saying it now. I would propose a motion, but that unless there's one on the table already for it, but I could do that when we come out of the committee of the whole.
There will be, yes, thank you. There will be one when we get there. That you can move. You can, you can. Thanks. So thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about this particular case?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead,
Councillor
Councillor
Lamb. Yeah. My turn to Councillor Woods. Sorry. Well, I'll go. I'm not in disagreement with anything that Councillor Nash said. In fact, I support his comments. The only question I have is they can of course use the road allowance. They don't need insurance. What happens if they wanted to log that property, clear cut it, take all the wood off it, and that involves trucks coming in and out across over the road allowance? Could they do that, or what regulation would they have to go through to do that? I guess they'd have to have a commercial entrance, I would think. But beyond that, would we just allow people to use the road allowance with trucks and stuff to clear cut or log the property? That's my only question.
Okay, anybody want to?
I'm not sure. It's
Jackson.
probably a CAO question, but if a user of the municipal road allowance does not need to make any improvements, therefore it is not required to obtain any further authority, that could be done without any further municipal response. If they damage the road, they would have to obviously place it back the way it was. But as long as they're not making any improvements and they're just crossing the road allowance to get to a they want to harvest trees on, it's my understanding from my experience that nothing is required.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this one? Any questions in the council chamber?
There's no questions here from Councillor Nash or Councillor Woods and Councillor Bray. They've indicated no.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next one and we'll come back to this in a minute when we're back in regular session. Item 5.3 is simply a report for information of a decision of the Land Tribunal in respect to the appeal by Ambience Fine Homes. I don't know that there's it's kind of self-explanatory. I guess if there were questions from council, you could ask for them. Is there any introduction required? Madam CAO or John?
I don't think so, Your Worship, through you. I think this is just an FYI. If you recall, the municipality agreed to settle the issue, and it went before the tribunal. The tribunal agreed to enact the bylaw with the language that both parties, the applicant and the municipality, requested. So it's just a technical indication of what happened, and it followed the roadmap that we set out for our solicitor.
Okay, thanks. Once again, are there any questions or comments from council on this?
I just have one quick question. If nobody in the town hall has any questions first, I can't see them.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was just a question. I don't know if something we can answer today, John, or not, but do you know what the process is going forward now? Like, are we expecting a report, do you know, in the next month or 6 months or year? Do you have any estimation on the timeline for the next steps, I guess?
No, I don't. The hook on the bylaw and the ability to proceed with the project is that it has to have the H symbol removed. And that will only be removed once a satisfactory report is provided to council on the impacts of the project, describing its details in terms of environmental and social impacts. So that study has to be undertaken. Council has to be happy with it, may or may not require a peer review. And we'd offered to share that with one of the neighbors that was requesting that information to agree to its enactment. So could be 6 months, it could be 6 years. It's really all in the hands of the owner of the property.
All right, thank you. Councillor Lamb?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right, if there is nothing further, then I will entertain a motion that the Council of Municipality of Whitestone reconvene into a regular session at, we're about 5:09 PM. Sure, mover and seconder for that, please.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Councillor Bray, seconded by,
I can second, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
thank you. So I will ask our CAO, our clerk, to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
All right. Thank you very much. So now, then matters arising from the discussion we just had in committee of the whole. The suggested motion for the first one on the EP zones is as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive the planning consultant's report entitled Environmental Protection EP Zones, Municipality of Whitestone Zoning Bylaw number 07-2018 for information. Can we get a mover and seconder, please?
I can move that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Nash moves, seconded by,
I'll second, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
thank you, Councillor Woods. Any further discussion on this one?
If I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I just gonna wonder if we could do a little amendment to the motion that's on the floor. I don't know if I could read something that I was scribbling up here as we were talking, but I'll try and read it slowly. And see if there's a seconder of it. That the council of the municipality of Whitestone at this time does not wish to proceed with a fill or site altering bylaws. That doesn't, that would be it, but it doesn't close it off for future, but just saying we don't need to do anything at this time, and that kind of puts it to rest for a little while instead of people asking if it might be brought back or something. So again, I'll just read that again, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone at this time does not wish to proceed with a fill or site altering bylaw. I don't know if we might get a seconder for that.
Okay, that's an amendment moved. Is there a seconder?
Well, who seconded the motion? Wouldn't they have to agree to it?
No, this is an amendment to the motion was simply to receive the report and take no action, right? So no further action other than.
I'll second
So
Councillor
the
Nash.
question is, the question really is, with this amendment is, do you want to say that we're not going to do anything about it at this time? Right? That's
Yeah,
the
I
intent of-
don't have a problem with that. So
All
I'll
right, so
second his-
you're seconding Councillor Nash. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. And any further discussion? All right, so I guess, Madam Clerk, we should call the question on the amendment.
Thank you. I'm just going to repeat the motion to make sure I have it correct. The council of the municipality of Whitestone at this time does not wish to proceed with a fill or site altering bylaw.
That is correct, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Calling the question,
Who is,
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
I might be in highway.
we're not hearing you. Councillor Lamb, is that a yay or a nay?
But I don't know whether you can hear
It's a little bit broken up.
me. Yeah,
I'm going to take that as a yes. I believe that's what I've heard. Unless you tell me something differently later. Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
and Mayor Comrie.
yes, that's fine. Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
So that's the amendment. Now we need to go back and I guess and then do the whole receive or approve the whole motion as amended.
Okay, the motion as amended, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb, would you like to try that again, Councillor Lamb?
yes.
Thank you. Loud and clear this time.
Yeah.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie. Mayor Comrie,
Yes.
thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We can move on then to item 5.2 and the the resolution as I have it so far is that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive the memorandum update on Salvatore et al. Application to close and purchase a section of road allowance for information, and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone, and I believe that this Councillor Nash was going to move that and that the council of the municipality of Whitestone refund the applicant's deposit.
I do have some wording, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, do
This-
you have some wording? Okay, please.
Yes, so the second half is that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby provide a full refund of the administration fee and the security deposit to the applicant.
Okay, so is there a mover and seconder for that whole entire motion? Maybe we can do it in one piece.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Okay, that's moved by Councillor Woods, seconded by,
I can second that, Mr. Mayor.
thank you, Councillor Nash. Any further discussion? All right, we can call the question then, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes,
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, and finally, item 5.3, which was the notice of the Ontario Land Tribunal decision, that the motion is that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive receive the Ambience Fine Homes Ontario Land Tribunal decision of March 10th, 2023 for information. Who will move that and second that?
I'll move it.
Councillor Lamb, thank you. Seconded by
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bray. Okay, any further discussion? If not, let's call the question.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
yes,
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item 7, which is the consent agenda. And we have on the consent agenda a number of minutes. Special council meeting minutes for Thursday, March 30th. Regular council meeting minutes for Tuesday, April 4th. Special council meeting minutes for Tuesday, April 11th. Special council meeting minutes for Thursday, April 13th. Special council meeting minutes for Monday, April 24th. And the cemetery board meeting minutes for Wednesday, March 29th. And also the unfinished business, which is listed on page 4. So going to get a mover and second, or please, that the council of the municipality of Whitestone hereby approves the following. That is the special council meeting minutes of March 30th, 23, April 11th, 2023, April 13th, 2023, and April 24th, 2023, and the regular council meeting minutes for April 4th, 2023, and that council receives for information the cemetery board minutes for March 29th, 2023, and the unfinished business listing contained in the consent agenda dated May 2nd, 2023.
I can make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nash, seconded by,
I'll second, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
thank you. Any discussion on these minutes?
through you, Mr. Mayor, I had one very quick question. It's in regards to unfinished business. Let me just get to it. It's, I believe, page for others, page, where is it here? Page 6 of 219. There's no date on it, but it's the fourth box down. And it reads, staff to work with the Magneto Pioneers Association to discuss options that will include boat storage to be permitted and winches will be permitted, no docks or storage boxes permitted, and the municipality assumes no liability or responsibility. The only question I'd have there, I probably didn't notice it the last time it was up, was I didn't know if we'd permitted to have winches. I thought it was only boats at the time. So really it's just a note of maybe I misunderstood what was spoken to that day or not. Might not be a big deal, but I'm not sure maybe what other members of council had recalled on that. I didn't remember again that winches were going to be permitted. But I'm not saying they weren't going to be permitted either. They were or weren't. I just don't think there was a decision.
Madam CAO, do you have any recollection?
Through you,
I don't-
Mr. Mayor, my recollection is this was cut and paste from the minutes of the meeting. And it was a clerk's note. So council received the report for information, asked staff to meet with the Magneto Pioneer Association, which I believe, if I look at our Public Works Manager, is happening tomorrow. So the Public Works Manager, our CBO, and representatives from the association are going to start the conversation tomorrow. And this was delayed simply because of some folks' vacation at the other end. What we can do is just go back and listen to the audio, make sure that the minutes reflect the wishes of council.
Yeah, I think I honestly don't recall what exactly what the discussion was at the time, but the reason for, some of the existing, what I call boat caches do in fact have a winch involved. And the reason for that simply is that you want to pull the boat up onto something, in the same sort of manner that you would to get it onto a boat trailer. These are not boat trailers, but if you wanted to get them onto a trailer, you would have to probably use the winch on the trailer to winch it up, right? So that's, it's just to pull the boat a bit out of the water so that it's not still floating around and subject to wind and that sort of thing. So some of them do in fact have that provision already. And I don't recall us saying that we would tell them, oh no, you can't do that. Might be a little difficult to enforce too, have to have somebody going out there to walk around and see what people are, what arrangement they actually have, because they're all a little bit different.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I think maybe we can see where the discussion goes and pick this up.
Mr. Mayor,
In fact,
Councillor Lamb.
go ahead.
My recollection is that, personally, I was lukewarm, I'll say, on winches. There are winches and systems that are fairly simple, and then of course my concern was they then get more and more complicated and bigger and bigger, and soon they're a problem. The idea to have someone pull their tinny boat up is one thing, but the matter of the degree. I remember myself when I was concerned about more was the storage boxes and things like that, and what becomes an acceptable storage bin of any kind, and that's where we talked about perhaps the Magnetawan Pioneers Association getting a, a bid or something, and maybe renting out spaces for people to store their boats or their oars or whatever, right? So that's my recollection of the discussion. So I was kind of on the fence with respect to winches, and still am, quite frankly. Thank you.
All right, well, this is I guess this is really, I think this is a matter arising from the consent agenda, to be honest. We're unless somebody says that the minutes are inaccurate and we need to change them.
No, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine with what Michelle had said. If they just want to go back and have a quick look, I'm just making note of it. I'm not really too concerned what it says there. Just going forward, I want to make sure when it does come back to us, or that the association doesn't think we're saying it's okay to have them all. That was all. So I'm not going to object to the unfinished business item. I just wanted to make it aware that I think it might have been a little, I don't know if say typo, but just a little different than what I had remembered. And I think part of that was just remembering, if we're doing boat storage, we're talking about boat storage, pulling a tin boat up, and what's happening on one lake, we have to think about what's happening on many other lakes. But I don't want to digress from just approving the minutes. So I'll stop there, and that's for another meeting.
Okay, thank you. Can we call the question then for this resolution to approve
Thank
and
you.
receive?
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. Number 8, accounts payable. The motion is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receive for information the accounts payable listing in the amount of $32,826.36 for the period ending April 15th, 2023, and $160,312.53 for the period ending April 26th, 2023. Mover and seconder.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Wood, seconded by,
I'll second Councillor Lamb.
thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any discussion on these items?
I have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please,
Thank you.
Councillor Woods.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It was item 1251. I can't read the page number too well. I think it's 95, bottom of 95, Fat Architects. Says facilities capital nursing station. I was just wondering, is that the last bill that we're getting from Fat Architects, or?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the final invoice for the work at the nursing station.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions?
If I might, I'm not sure if Council Bray had any questions. I'll just ask if she does first, if she'd like to speak, no problem.
She's indicated that she does not.
So I guess I just have a couple of my general things and just ask, I won't go through I'll just rhyme off the payment number. 1248 1250 1265 1275 1278 and 1280. I know those are all related to what I'll call legal or legal-ish matters. And I just ask if they could be provided to council in a closed session format. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything, any other questions? If not, I guess we could call the vote to receive the payables.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, that brings us then to number 9, which is staff reports, and there are several of them, 5 of them. First one having to do is the report from our Public Works Manager on municipal boat launches. I'll ask for a mover and seconder. First, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works 2023-05, the update on the municipal boat launches for information. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Seconded by
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bray. Thank you. All those in favor?
Are we calling the question now?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. I mean, yeah.
There was another, this is the report on boat launches. Is that correct?
It is.
Did you want our Public Works Manager to speak to the report?
Well, I guess I was trying to get a motion on the floor. I mean, there is a possibility that we might decide to do something in response to the report, but I guess we're just trying to get us to stage 1.
So we do have a
Right.
motion on the floor.
Well, okay. What we're doing is if we start discussion, we've received the report anyway, I guess, but all right, we can defer the motion till later on. All right, I'll allow the the manager to introduce his report. Let's do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report,
Turn your camera on.
sorry, there we are. Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes, thank you, David.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. So this report just provides an update on our boat launches for information. Some of the information of note is our assets related to the municipal landings will be reviewed by our engineering, and these assets will be integrated into our asset management plan. We have a meeting coming up tomorrow regarding Bolger Landing and boat storage, and that's with the Magnetawan Pioneers Association. We have been asked to do a review of I believe it's the Northern Basin for Farley. It's our Northern Basin of Whitestone Lake in the area. And we completed that in Farley's Road. So we have a preliminary review done with some numbers associated with it and some issues that might arise. With that as well, we have of note the existing Farley's boat launch at the end of Farley's Road is receiving some maintenance this season. to accommodate additional parking. Over the winter, we had it open to the public to park, and the situation was reviewed. There was no issues or complaints received. Operationally, plowing was accommodated by people parking there, and it was not well used. There was only a handful of cars at any given time parked there, and they parked on the left-hand side. We are moving towards opening it to the public for the summer, while retaining historical parking rights for the water access properties, which are untitled. These rights are untitled and will be retained. And that should address some of the boat launch concerns in our official plan for the northern basin of Whitestone Lake. Those are the big ones. I know that there's going to be a little bit of work done on the maintenance work done on the other boat launches within the municipality through our operational budget, operating budget as well. And yes, thank you. If we have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions or comments from councillors on this report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Go ahead.
Thank you. David, thank you for your report. Once again, it's quite detailed in nature, which is great to see. And part of it is just a comment just for any members of the public that might listen in. I think in total there, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, I think out of all the boat launches we've listed, 7 of them are on Crown land and 3 of them are municipal launches, Bolger, Whitestone, at Church Street and Whitestone at Farley's. You might have noted in the report, but I was just saying it just as a general comment. And I know you've quoted in your report several excerpts from the official plan. I think a couple of the other lakes also have excerpts, but I don't think it's of that much importance. But I guess the one question I'd have, one of them is just I'm more knowledgeable of it. For maintenance activities on Gooseneck Lake boat launch, you have update signage, grading review, swim ladder request. The update signage, is that just to kind of put all the signs, like compress them, for lack of a better word? Is that what we're talking about, or is there more signs going up? That was all.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may address those questions. Thank you. Yes, Gooseneck, the plan is to clear up those signage and have those installed in short order, just to clean up the clutter in the area. I know we had some old sign and some repetitive signage, and hopefully we can keep the area beautiful and provide clear messaging when arriving and using our boat launches to protect our resources. I know we got these beautiful resources, and we need to keep a clear message at our boat launches. There was the request, we did receive requests for a boat ladder to be installed at this landing on the dock. That was one of the requests. We do have a ladder, a new ladder in stock should council provide direction in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. And I just have a couple other little questions, or I'll call them little, which is great. I did have a request just on that lake in particular, and I'm not going to hold you to a date, but I had a resident ask, I think it's a little early, but when will the dock be placed back out there? Would it be by the end of May, would you guess? You don't need to like just give a ballpark, just so I can pass something on to somebody.
Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We're trying to get some consistency year over year when they go out, when they go in. I know the public does appreciate some predictability and consistency in the operations, and that is correct. The end of May, we'll strive to get out before the end of May. Absolutely, yes.
Okay, perfect. And then my final question, one of them is just I think you guys do a great job, and I know we've raised our budget to $4,500 proposed budget to help you out with some of these boat launches. Hopefully in the years to come, we'll be able to get a little bit more money, which will help you out even more. But I think it's great, all the work you guys are going to do out at all these launches. And just for Bolger, since you guys are meeting out there tomorrow, and it's more of a comment, but I know we've spoken about boat storage. I'm trying to find Bolger on here. I know it was here. I just can't find it now. Where was it? Number 8. I know you guys are going to be meeting tomorrow and we talked about boat storage. I'm assuming something will come back to council. If I'm right, I'm not sure if it's boat storage is going to be 12 months a year, or if we're talking about boat storage during the year, and things like that. So I think it's something that we all have to decide on once it comes back. And I'm assuming that yourself and the building inspector and anybody else that might be going out is really kind of like a fact finding to see what they're asking for. Am I correct on that? And then you'll bring something back to us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, tomorrow's meeting will be over the phone. Muskoka Pioneers are, the president is available by phone. He's on the road. He's traveling tomorrow, but to get this conversation, get things rolling, we had decided that we need to make it happen. So I expect there'll be more than one conversations. But there'll be some talking points that will be brought up. And then that absolutely can be brought back to council and discussed once we have a more refined messaging or requests. I really don't know the extent of what the request will be, but we'll bring that back. Jamie, our chief building official, he'll play a big part in on answering some of these questions.
Perfect. Thanks you, David.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, it's Councillor Woods.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Dave, great report. I think we all know a heck of a lot more about boat launches in the area than any of us ever did before. I know you guys have done a lot of work trying to clean things up, and I know everybody appreciates it. There's a couple spots on here that I've brought up in the past, and so I'm just going to bring them up again because they're not listed, and I don't think it's anyone's fault, but I'm just going to keep bringing them up. Snakeskin Lake. There is a launch there. I don't know if we own it or it's an M&R, but it is actually listed when you go on the maps for West Parry Sound Geographic Network as a boat launch. I know there are a lot of people that use it. I just wonder if we could get this list updated to include that. Another little unknown one that maybe not a lot of people in the entire municipality use, but definitely a lot of people in the area of Ainslie Lake do use it. It's not much of a real boat launch, but a lot of people do slide their little tinny in there, and a lot of the local families in and around that area use it summer and winter. You see a lot of kids out there ice skating quite a bit. There was an attempt to try and clean up a little bit of an area so the kids could have a picnic table on the side of the lake in the winter, and they were told to take it away by M&R. So as a municipality, I would like us to look at something so that, you know, there could be a picnic table on the side of the shoreline there. If we own the road and we have the shoreline around these lakes, I would like to see something done for all the kids out in that area that use it, because it is greatly used, that little lake and that little launch. And I'll just leave my comments at that. Thanks very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for providing this information. I've got to say, Ainslie Lake seems like it's a pretty straightforward adding it to the list and contact M&R and getting something maybe formal or informal with them from the municipality. We do seem to get a fairly quick response dealing with the MOE and with our applications. Now Snakeskin, I have not been out there, so that will take some effort, and maybe you can help me with some information. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Okay,
I just
so
have one, or sorry, Mr. Mayor.
yeah, I'll give you another chance in a minute. I was Going to raise a concern with respect to this parking area that is at the end of Farley's Road. And I noticed that here there's a suggestion that the current parking area is, accommodates 14 vehicles. There was an improvement to increase that by 10, it looks like by 10 vehicles, if I'm reading this correctly, and allow members of the public to park there. And I foresee a problem with that, okay, because you have 12 people who have rights entitled to park there. And in the past, what we have done, as you've heard, is if those people arrive there and they discover that there are vehicles parked in space that they think is, if you like, allocated to them, they complain to the bylaw enforcement officer who puts tickets on the cars. Because they have a right to be there and the public doesn't have a right to be there. It seems to me that if you increase the space, you're still opening it up to a problem. If more people think that, oh yeah, there's space there, I can start using it, then someone who has a right to park there comes on a Friday evening or whenever to access their property and there is no parking space. And I think then that you're going to have problems, and the municipality is going to end up in a position of liability because someone who has, as I say, the people who have a right in title are legally entitled to priority over other people. There is a solution to this, of course, and the solution is to actually employ permitting, and what you would want to do, of course, is I think what you would want to do is you want to use the electronic permitting that we, for all intents and purposes, will have purchased for Wabash, even though we're not going to use it, because that way, if people, you do not give away spots, that you make sure that there are enough spots reserved for the people who actually have a right to use it, and you don't give them away to other people who don't, and then cause a problem when somebody's legal rights been infringed. So we'll throw that out to you as a matter of concern. I think I don't think you can just say, oh well, we'll add 10 spaces to it without having a permitting system of some sort to ensure that the people who are legally entitled to use it always will have a space when they need it. And I don't know, and again, I don't know if we even have clarity around sort of how many spaces there are. I notice in the past when I've gone there, what I've seen is there have been trailers in some spaces. There are empty boat trailers. There are car toppers sometimes just turned upside down in the space, and I guess that's perhaps the owner's way of designating this, saying this is my space or whatever. But so I'm not sure how this all works, but I think expanding it and making it once the word gets around that anybody can park there, then in the winter time, I didn't see any risk, and obviously you didn't experience any problems with it. But in the summertime, you might, because there are people who are looking for parking spaces on Whitestone. I don't know how many, but there are some. So that's my comment. And I would encourage us not to charge forward on that without a solution.
Three.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor? Oh, sorry.
Now, Mr. Creaser was going to respond to my comments.
Oh,
I think
sorry. Go
Councillor
ahead,
Nash,
David.
Councillor Lamb, and then I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that I'm not the only source of information that will be required to answer this question. And my plan in lengthy discussions with the bylaw, CAO, and some of the locals that use the area, that would like to use the area, a simple plan to go forward on a trial basis to see what needs are and what issues arise. So if we could get a comment from our lawyers, legal, on what is reasonable access to be provided by the property owners who have legal rights on title for access. If we get a comment on that and we could sign that or delineate that area and meet that standard, then at that point, we would have a better understanding of what it remains. How much extra area are we looking at? And if that is desirable, that we could go forward and see how much public interest we have, I think the cost would be very little to the municipality to really see where the problems and concerns are. I think they'll come up fairly quickly. And this answer comes from these lengthy conversations with the bylaw, the people, some of the interest groups there, and the CAO. That is our plan. I think that will limit some of our risk or exposure, and it will also address some of the requests that come from the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to say something, Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Just backing up a little bit. Up until last July or summer, we thought that was exclusive use at the end of Farley's Road. And we asked for a legal opinion, and as everyone will recall, I'm sure, it came back and said that is not exclusive use. They do need to have deeded parking. And what we've done in the past, made some errors along the way because we've given out permits to people who have not had deeded parking and then changed over so you can't have it anymore. But as I understand it, these 12 lots were getting like 5 spots each, right, permitted for, I don't know, $150 or something. It wasn't very much money. And I don't think that, and again, maybe it is a quick legal opinion, I don't think the answer is 5. I think if we say to people who have deeded access, you've got 2 spots, maybe even 3 spots, but somewhere in that area, that would leave an extra, whatever, 10 or 12 or 15 for not permanent parking, in my opinion, but public parking. I do not think that we should have permanent parking except for at Farley's Road where it's deeded. And unless we're going to have permanent parking all over the place. And we've already defeated that at Wallowsketch. So I don't want to overdo this in my mind and start to, I don't want to create something that doesn't work, but I think there's a simple solution here, and that is to give them 2 spots each or 3 spots, and the remainder that we clear out would be public parking. And indeed, those 12, if they had a 4th vehicle up there, friends of theirs in a weekend, their friends would be free to park in the public parking. They wouldn't be just for, they could do that, right? So I just think, I don't want to make it overcomplicated. And I fear that by having permits and whatever, that's what we're going to do. And so that's, again, I don't think we're going to solve this problem today, but those are sort of my general thoughts, at least going forward on this issue. So we did go down there, excuse me, I'm going around a big transport truck here that's in an accident. Oh dear. Councillor Woods and I went down there last fall And all that was in the parking lot, and I know it's the fall, were about 5 or 6 boats, tinny boats, turned upside down, very nicely and neatly displayed up on the right side of the boat area. And again, in the winter, we let 4 or 5 people who are on Long Arm Bay use it. No problem, no issues. So let's not overdo it, I guess is my caution here. But anyway, those are just comments. And again, we're not going to solve it tonight. So thank you.
Okay, well, just to respond to a couple things. Number one, we already have permit parking at the end of Farley's Road.
Mr. Mayor,
The permit parking
ahead.
is for the people, just let me finish. The permit parking is for the people who have a right in title to be there. And you're
I
you're
just
quite
said
right.
that,
The law-
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, all right, let's
Just
look
said that.
at the
I said-
number.
No, just
I
hold
wanna-
on. I want to clarify that statement. I said I'm not in favor of permitted parking except for the people at the end of Farley's Road who have deeded access. That's what I said. I didn't say they didn't have permanent parking. That's the only permanent parking. So at least quote me right. Thank you.
All right, okay, fine, thank you. Go ahead. Let's though take a look at our manager's report here. Current parking available, approximately 14 vehicles. There are 12 properties that have a legal right to be there. So that's one. I don't know where we're talking 4 or 5 parking spots per vehicle. We think we're basically talking one per vehicle with 2 others. And there is, I'm not suggesting for a minute that there's nothing to open up more parking spaces there for people. But what I'm concerned about is that if we do that, unless we create a large number of such spaces, and I don't think there's room there to do that from my recollection of the property, then we run into the situation where somebody who is entitled to be there and has paid a permit to have a parking spot gets there and finds that there isn't one. And so the question I'm asking is, how do we prevent that from happening? Because the consequences of that could be messy and expensive. And to say, well, let's see if it happens or not happens. I don't think, I'm not sure that's a good strategy. There isn't any motion on the floor with respect to this particular item, I don't think. I mean, not any. Well, sorry, there isn't any suggestion of what motion might be to do anything other than receive the report. But anyway, the report suggests that staff intends to go ahead and do this anyway. So I'm simply pointing it out. Anyway, we've got to.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, it's,
Yeah.
the CAO, I'll add my 2 cents to this, which is what I know administratively. Long before I arrived at the municipality, the deeded access folks were permitted to purchase up to 5 parking passes. And it's my understanding, and this is talking to the bylaw officer, is that very rarely would you see a parking pass, 5 cars for the same cottage in that parking area. And I'm understanding the reason the 5 parking passes were they were able to purchase them is that people drive different vehicles, or, a family member who lives in one city, drives up for the weekend, and another family in another city. So how do you get the parking pass back and forth? But it seems to me that the current 14 parking spaces available to the 12 deeded access properties have been sufficient. We haven't had any complaints. about not being able to park, not being able to leave their trailer there. You're right, the teeny boats are over tucked away in a corner there. It can get a bit messy in the summer, but generally it gets cleaned up in the fall. So I'm thinking that this is, I'm putting my opinion into council here is because I've been working with Dave we've been watching this parking area that from a trial perspective, the existing 14 parking spaces will be maintained and signed accordingly for the users. And we will let them know for sure as they start to buy their parking passes, and maybe we reduce it to 3. But they should at least know that they will now have shared parking with the public. One group on one side and one group on the other, depending on how Dave aligns the new parking area. And I think we just keep an eye on it over the summer and see how it works. I don't think we're going to allow for overnight parking for the public, but certainly there's overnight parking for the deeded access folks because it has to be that way. So that's just my thought, because I've been working on this in the parking passes and Councillor Lamb is right. There's a few people that somehow ended up with a parking pass over the years that really didn't have deeded access, and we worked through it. At some point it was extended into the fall and they understood the next year they wouldn't have a pass. And other folks actually that don't have parking passes, that don't have deeded access, they make some good arrangements on land for their property with neighbors in the area. So, most people are generally taken care of. So that was my comment on that end of things. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, the only other thing I would comment on this is that the majority of water access lots at the north end of Whitestone Lake don't use Farley's Road at all. They use the Whitestone Marina, and they have a slip there and they park there and they come in and they take the boats in and out, and that's the primary use throughout the summertime, not Farley's Road. Farley's Road might be used truly by the public who want to go fishing for a day or drop their tinny boat in or something. But I don't think it's going to start to be used by people instead of the marina, because there's not space for them to bring their big boats over and stuff like that. But again, I agree wholeheartedly with what the CAO has said, and I think it'll work. I certainly am not prepared to put some sort of extra permitting system in. From my standpoint, so let's let it fly. Let's see what happens. It'll be okay.
Okay, thank you.
The mayor, a little while ago,
Yes, I know you wanted to get in. I'll let you have the final word, and because we gotta move on here. We're gonna run out of time.
We are. My question was about something else. It was just to really say, I think it's on the website, but hopefully all our boat launches are shown on our website somewhere on a map. I believe they are, but if we can just make sure that they are shown somewhere that the public can find it easily. But I guess my question, since this Farley's Road came up, I guess a couple things. I know was spoken about this permitting or no permitting system, and I think it was council's decision that we don't need any permitting systems, and it was defeated, as Councillor Lamb had said. I believe from what David was saying and the CAO is that there'll be some signs put up, some signage for the people. And again, this is kind of a one-off situation in the fact that it used to be private land. It became the municipality's land, and there is deeded access based on that land, which used to be private, that the residents have the right to use it. So it really is almost private land, even though it's public land. So I think that can easily be done with signage, as what David was saying, signage or a couple curbs or whatever it might be. But I think one thing just to help out, I think when it comes to the size of the area that's needed, just under our municipal bylaw, it notes, it's a hard section to find, but it's 3.51B III, and it says any parking area designated to serve water access lots shall have a minimum area of 100 square meters for each lot to be served, and no parking shall be permitted within 15 meters of the high water mark. So I think it's very easy that if you have 12 lots, It's 12 lots times that amount, and that's the area that the residents of the 12 deeded lots get. And the rest of the area can be for the public. And if that's able to increase the parking by the proposed 10 parking spots from 14 to 24, I think that's fantastic. I think we already have it under a capital budget for that expansion. But instead of maybe issuing permits that say, here's a permit for 1 parking spot or 5 or 3, it's just a permit to park there. You have an area designated, and whether somebody brings 1 car or 4 cars, you have 100 square meters of area for each property, and that's what our bylaw lists right now. So that might just help out staff when they're trying to figure out the numbers or how to signage it or whatever. So that's all I had to say on that. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks. Can we call the question on the motion to receive this report and move on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just there wasn't so the resolution said to receive the report for information and that council provide direction in respect of the public use of the Farley's Road boat launch and parking facility. I recognize that that David's intention was in his report. I think it's important that council endorse that. And if there's any clarity in terms of the number of parking passes, I believe some have already been sold this year. And a couple of folks have already received 5 because this came up early in the year. Some folks buy their passes in January just to get ahead of the game and prepared for the summer. So it may be that we have to manage that a little bit differently this year and come to a conclusion next year with the exact number for each and every person. I'm not expecting any issues, but I think the rest of this resolution should say something about council support for the construction of a public parking area, if council is agreeable to that.
Well, so far, the only motion that is on the floor is to receive the report. There isn't anything. So someone would have to then amend the report to say something different. And I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem adding an amendment. I think right now it reads that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report PW 2023-5 update on municipal boat launches for information, and that council does hereby provide the following direction in respect to the public use of Farley's Road boat launch and parking facility. And I'll digress for one quick second as I get it. I believe, not if you could, Dave, I think right now, currently we have in our budget $4,000 under capital. Am I right?
I believe you're correct.
So could we add there to say, that council does hereby provide the following direction in respect to the public use of Farley's Road and parking facilities, that the Works Department will undertake $4,000 of improvements. And if we do that, David, if we just leave it at $4,000 of improvements, that kind of leaves it up to you on what needs to be done instead of getting too specific. Would that work?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would appreciate that. We're going to do the best we can with what we got. And I think it's we're going to try and massage it as best we can. We did find a few issues. We had some soft areas, which we tried to address last year, surcharging and filling, and we use some cloth just to try and stabilize that area. So hopefully the winter was works in our favor. So we're going to try and do the best we can and get as much as we can and make it as user friendly for our public and the permit holders. And that includes the whole launch area. So that's the idea, is we're just going to improve, complete some much needed maintenance on it, as well as add some public parking.
Okay, so thank you, David. So I'll reread the motion then and see if we can get a seconder. That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report PW 2023-5 update on the municipal boat launches for information, and that the council does hereby provide the following direction
So, sorry to
In-
interrupt, but the council.
Yeah, in
Nash,
respect-
there is a motion already on the floor that was moved and seconded to receive the report. The clerk can read back who it was. I don't have a note of who moved it and seconded it, but
Yes, Councillor Woods
I think it was
moved
Councillor
and Councillor
Woods
Bray
and-
second.
that,
So
yeah.
if we want to do this a little bit differently, which is fine, we can receive the report for information, full stop. And then there can be another resolution that speaks to council's intention with respect to the boat launch and creating some improvements for the boat launch to allow for public parking shared with the deeded access users, something to that effect.
I
So-
think that's a nice simple way, either that or we have to amend the motion to add the other piece and we deal with the amendment. One way or the other, we're gonna deal with two pieces, right?
Fair enough.
So,
So I'm hearing that you'd like me to call the question to receive the report for information,
All right.
Mr. Mayor?
yeah, why don't we do that? And then Councillor Nash can introduce his second amendment
Very good.
or his second.
Councillor
motion.
Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes,
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion to receive the report for information is carried.
okay, so now you want to provide some direction. Councillor Nash, you want to move that?
yes, if I could, and there's already a draft motion that we are all provided, for the most part, page 3 of 7. Anyways, I'll just read it out. And I'd like to propose this and see if we can get a seconder. That the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report PW 2023-05, update on municipal boat launches for information, and that council does hereby provide the following direction in respect to Farley's Road boat launch and parking facility by undertaking improvements in the amount of $4,000 in brackets budget. So if you'd like, I'll read that second part back. Or I'll read it once more for you, Mayor.
If I may, Councillor Nash, we already have a motion to receive the report for information. So we
It's been
just
passed.
need the second part
Okay,
for
perfect.
this
Sorry about
motion.
that.
Just
Yep,
so there's
sorry.
no
I'll-
doubling up on that, if you're okay with that.
No problem. I'll reread it then. Thank you. That the council does hereby provide the following direction in respect to Farley's Road boat launch and parking facility by undertaking improvements in the amount of $4,000 in commas bracket or in brackets budget.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Nash, it would be appropriate to add something that speaks to the allowance of public parking. So the improvements would be to allow for shared public parking with the deeded access users.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, if possible, I'd like it to read the way that I've proposed, only because we know we're doing some public improvements and we'll see, we don't know how much of the improvements will be needed for what's there now and what's for the public. So I think if we leave it a little open-ended, we're not saying it's for private or we're not saying it's for public. We're just saying there's improvements happening. So I'll read that again. The council does hereby provide the following direction in respect to Farley's Road boat launch and parking facility by undertaking improvements in the amount of $4,000 in brackets budget.
okay. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second Councillor Woods.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? So I have one. That 4K that we're talking about, was that not for multiple boat launches? I don't see in the budget. I don't seem to remember it being all to be spent on Farley's Road.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, respond. And if you look under the capital budget and you will find it on 15 of 19, the latest version. And it is under recreational, 15 of 19, and I'll read it out. Farley's Road boat launch and signage in the amount of 7,000, sorry, that's stroked out, $4,000 from Parkland Reserve.
I'm sorry, you said it was. Sorry, did you say 15 of 19?
I do apologize. In the capital section down in the,
That's yesterday's, the
correct,
one we were looking at yesterday, right?
correct.
Okay, how far down is it?
It's down under recreation, so you'll see just above other, you'll see recreation, about halfway down the page, pretty much in the middle.
Okay, Farley's boat launch. Signage, oh, plus signage, it says, yeah, $4,000. From reserve, okay, so that was earmarked for that. That was all earmarked for that particular one, okay, that's. You answered my question, thank you. Any other comments or questions about this? All right, so I guess we can call the question on this particular motion.
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Mayor Comrie, if I may make a request, could we take a 5-minute recess?
well, I was wondering about a recess. We can take a recess. It's a question, I guess, of how long we're going to go. Are we, because we're not anywhere close to finishing and we're sort of 2.5 hours now into the meeting. Do you want to take, half an hour or whatever and have a real break, or do you want to?
I'll leave that up to council. My request is just a 5-minute break to stretch our legs and maybe get a drink of water, but
Yeah, no.
whatever the
I-
others would like would be fine.
I guess, I'm just looking at what there is ahead of us and I'm not sure. If we try to finish this, we will be well through the supper hour. So I mean, unless we're gonna trim 5 minutes is great if we're gonna trim the agenda. But and wrap up in the next half hour or so. But if we're gonna go to the end, then I'd like to take a longer break, like half an hour or something.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd be fine with a 5-minute break. I think we can carry on. I know there lots of people are probably wanting to get to watch the hockey game whenever we're over. And I'm sure some people in the community center want to get home that are there. So I'd support a 5-minute break. And then get back on.
But by that, are you agreeing though that we'll curtail the meeting at a certain time and not allow it to drag on till like 8 o'clock or whatever?
Definitely not. However long it takes to get through this meeting. I think if you need to cut off because you need a dinner time, then Councillor Bray or the deputy mayor's on the call, or Councillor Woods, by all means, they can carry on and finish off the meeting. I think we need to get through every single item that's on this agenda, because we've already had 2 meetings postponed. I think if it takes us till 8:30, whatever time it might be that personally that we should get through it all. Normally we would take about up to 4 hours. 4 o'clock would have put us at 8 o'clock anyways, right? So I don't think we need to take a half-hour break partway through. Just my opinion.
Okay, what about the rest of you?
Speak up.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councillor Woods.
Yeah,
How does everybody feel about taking 15 minutes? Would that be enough for you, Mr. Mayor? And I don't think that's going to put us on too long, and then we can get down to business.
well, I guess so.
Doesn't matter to me. I'm in the car anyway, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you're gonna. All right,
Mr.
well, all right. We'll take about 15 minutes or so then.
So do I stay on the call, or I guess I could just stay on the call, right?
I think you might as well for that period of time, yeah. Shit. Unless you were
Okay,
planning to-
I think I can hit *6 and go mute, but
Yes, you can.
thank you.
All right.
So for clarity, Mr. Mayor, I have 6:22. So for those folks that are watching the clock, we could come back at 6:37.
So are we back? Is everybody back?
I'm here and I can hear you, George.
I'm here, George, and I can hear you.
How about Michelle Hendry?
Yes, the clerk is here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I do not, however, see. Oh. Yeah, so and I assume the two councilors who are in the community center are there as well, right? And I see David is here. Okay, so we finished 9.1. We're on 9.2. Is that correct?
We're on 9.2, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so this is supply and delivery of gravel materials. Motion. I'll read it, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report PW 2023-06 tender award for the supply, delivery, and spread of gravel materials for information, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby provide pre-budget approval and award the contract for the supply, delivery, and spreading of 10,100 tons of granular material on various municipal roads to Fowler Construction Company Limited in the amount of $207,961.50 plus HST. Would someone like to move and second that, please?
I can move that, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Nash.
Seconded, thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
thank you, Councillor Woods. It's open for discussion, and I suppose should give the opportunity to our manager of public works, since he's still here on the and in the meeting, if you want to say any remarks to start off with.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just to introduce this, this tender was for our gravel requirements this year. This would include both our capital and operating budget. And it was initially tendered for some time ago for the proposed operational and proposed capital projects. So you'll see it was tendered for the option to be larger. But in fact, with our draft budget that we have, most current one, this does reflect our current needs in relation to our operating and capital budget. Of note, there is an increase of 14.2% year over year when comparing the cost for delivered A gravel in our yard. So that's probably the most significant material that we use. And that does paint quite the picture of the difference in cost. Thank you.
All right, questions or comments on this motion?
If I might, through you, Mr. Mayor, David, I just have two really brief questions. I noticed that it says, I think you tendered for 10,200 plus 3,500 as an option. We're going to be awarding 10,100 if I'm correct. And just in some quick math, that says pricing granular aid delivered to Public Works Yard 1917. Is there any other materials that we're using this year, or was there entire tender for granular aid? Just wondering. And does it vary on different sites? But that's just to dump at our yard. Just wondering on that 1917. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the tender was specifically for each capital project. So we have capital and proposed. This was for the proposed capital and operational. So our gravel plan, we have a few identified, Churley, Quinn Road, Crown Retreats, and Aldge Road. So each one of those are going to be different prices. The further they are from the supplier, the higher the cost. So you're going to have a higher cost for Aldge than you would for, let's say, Quinn, which is closer to the supplier. And I used that number just to demonstrate a fairly consistent operational needs. So year over year, we have some gravel delivered to the yard, 1,000 to 2,000 ton in that neighborhood since I've been here. And that's a fairly consistent purchase we make. So using that, the most consistent operational task we complete to demonstrate the difference in cost. Otherwise, it's hard to compare Aldge Road to Farley's Road, which we did last year, or Larimer Lake. That was the only intention, just to show apples to apples what we paid last year to this year for the exact same task. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Do you know I'm just curious what the highest amount per ton was for like Aldge Road? Did it go up to like 24 or 25? I'm just more curious than anything, nothing to do with the report whatsoever. And if you don't know, that's fine right now.
It will take me about 10 seconds. When looking at Aldge Road as an example, as the higher cost, we were looking at 2264 delivered and placed as a high cost.
Thank you very much, David. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? If not, I'll ask our CAO to call the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion carries.
All right, thank you. That brings us to 9.3, award of contract to purchase a water tank. The motion is that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive report Public Works -2023-08 entitled a request for proposal award for the supply of one slip tank and that's for information. And that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby provide pre-budget approval for the award of the supply of one slip tank to Road Maintenance Equipment and Services, Inc. in the amount of $37,000 plus HST. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll
Councillor Nash,
second it.
seconded by Councillor
I'll-
Lamb. Discussion. Any comments or questions?
That's good. It's 37. It's 37 instead. Wasn't the budget 42?
Maybe it's allowing for the HST.
Oh, you get the HST back though, right?
Yeah, we do.
Most of it?
Most,
Through,
No, that's good.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have two questions, and Dave, I will be supporting the purchase of this. I did my questions, and as soon as I found out we were gonna get the money back on the fire truck when we sold it, that sold it on the water truck at the last budget meeting, to be honest. But I'm just wondering, once we get the water tank, is there anything else we need to do? Or does this already come pre-piped, I'll call it, with the pump? Or is there other little things that we might need to do in order to get this functioning for a water truck? And the second part to that is, I know you said the other one we had wasn't very well, but can we get $1,000 or $2,000 for it or something like that? Just out of curiosity, more than anything. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To answer your first question, it was tendered as an operational turnkey. It will be set up for the truck with the operations inside the truck to turn on, turn off. It does come with the pump. It comes with everything we need, including the ability to place calcium, should we need that as well. It is transferable from U body to U body. So should we replace a truck, this provided we continue plowing with these trucks, which I expect we will, this will fit and be suitable for many, many, many years. And to answer your second question, how much money would we get for this tank? It's paper thin at maximum is paper thin. At minimum, it's thin as air. This old tank came out of scrap. It was it's been laying out in the field because it was scrap and garbage out in the one of the quarries, and one of our employees found it, tried to cobble it together, tried to glue it, tried to weld it, tried to get anything we saw online or watched on the TV to get it to stick, to make it to work, so we could get these holes sealed. We tried everything. And it's just so thin, and it was garbage when we got it, and it's garbage when we got it, and you wouldn't get much for scrap because it is so thin.
Okay, thanks, David.
Give it back to the quarry. Only kidding.
any further questions or comments? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you want to call the question, please?
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
I was on mute. Sorry about that. Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, 9.4. A memorandum regarding environmental compliance monitoring at the Olds Road landfill site, with a link to a full report. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby receive memo 2020-2022. Oh, sorry, that's not, it's memo for the period 2020 to 2022 environmental compliance monitoring report, Olds Road landfill site for information.
I'll
Mr.
make
Mayor, I'll move.
I can second
Okay.
that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. We have Councillor Bray moving and Councillor Nash seconding. Any discussion on this report?
If nobody else is gonna say anything, I'm not sure if Dave was gonna summarize it. I just have a couple comments, really. One of them is just, I think it's more of a general question, not for this memorandum, but just in general. I think we need to remember for people of the public that may pick up a paper copy of this. When I'm looking at the paper copy I have, under the title, it says Municipality of Whitestone Landfill Monitoring Reports. But I'm not sure where the link is on this printed version. You wouldn't know there's a link there. And this is what I'm looking at in our agenda. So I do think as part of a procedural bylaw, just going forward, and this again isn't based on the Alls landfill report, just in general, that I think if we do have a report, which I had the benefit of having staff print out for me, it's about 30 pages. But I do think it's important to include these things in our agenda to give the public a full report, just moving forward, and be it on this or anything else like that. But when I read the report, and I'm not sure if other members have read it, or maybe some of the people on the call, there was a couple things, and hopefully, David, you might know the answer, and if you don't, maybe you can look into it and get back to us at a later date. But when I read the report from Azimuth, I noticed it mentioned, I'm just trying to flick pages here as I go. It noted that we hadn't done it says a detailed survey has not been completed at the site. And I'm just wondering if maybe that's something we can budget for in the coming years to make sure we have a very detailed survey. I also noted that it said at the east end of the site, I'm just paraphrasing a few things. It says it would suggest that surface water movement would flow from the waste area, which represents the upper reaches. So I think maybe if we can just make sure that if some of the water flow is leaving the site, maybe we can build a berm. I think I saw something in your report about building a berm, so maybe that captures that. And then in the report, I noticed it mentions in the past 2 years, municipality has also altered operations to segregate clean wood and yard waste such that it can be ground and utilized as interim cover material. So I know it says interim, and I know the final cover material would be soil. And I noticed, I'm just trying to find it here, David. Let me see here. It's under capacity here. I was surprised to have read one section here, and I think this is for a larger discussion at a different council meeting than today. But it says, this is on page 19 of the Azimuth report, and it says, it's talking about the site attenuation facility and its current volume kind of, and it says, the attenuation capacity of the site may not be able to accommodate a more significant increase in waste acceptance rates. As such, consideration for these potential limitations should be considered as part of the waste management strategy for the municipality in the future. For example, a shift or diversion of waste from Dunchurch landfill site may not be able to be accommodated given the attenuation capacity of the site. So I think we just need to be aware that they're noting here that maybe we can't take all the material from the Dunchurch and bring it up here, and that's really reducing the timelines here. So I just wanted to point that out when I saw that. I think it was important to bring up. And then one of the other, and the last point I had is it mentioned in here, David, that one of our wellheads, I'm going to call it for sampling the water. And when I looked at the sketch, it's kind of where I think a lot of the brush is put, that it shows it was broken. Who knows when it was? I don't know if it was the last 1 year or 5 years ago, but it says it hasn't been replaced. And I'm just thinking, when I look at the sketch that they had, an 11 by 17 sketch, the wellhead MW1 is the only wellhead, I'll call it, that was kind of on the north/west side of the landfill. And I know in the spring, certainly, that water does leach from the dump and go down along the Alds ditch, I'll call it, and down towards I'll call it the northwest. And there was a sampling station that says SW5, but there is no report. So I'm not sure. The only comment that I ask if we can maybe comment on is there any way that we could get that monitoring well replaced? Maybe they put it in a different area, because I'm sure equipment drove over it, which happens all the time. or it was just buried or whatever might have happened. But maybe get something like that put back in the next couple of years just to make sure that we can monitor and what water's going towards. The west, as I know, that would eventually make its way down across under Alds Road and actually into Gooseneck Lake.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may ask for some help along the way here from Councilor Nash. If I don't address all your questions, I think there was a few questions there which I was trying to grasp. I think the easiest one is the wellhead. This site, maybe I should go through an overview, and I think that may help a lot of people on this site. There's been a lot of work done over the years with committees and that to get us where we are. Some great work that we're following along in the plans. So I have to thank the counselors and the staff that have been involved over the years to get us where we are. So this site is a small site. It is long and narrow. We are kind of in the middle of that with our footprint in this long and narrow part. And if you think of it kind of almost in a north-south direction is the long part, and the east-west would be the narrow part. And the flow from drainage, from the groundwater, is controlled by bedrock. So the water really has no choice but to follow the bedrock or surface area. And so if we're in the lower quadrant of this long rectangle, it flows just to the north out to the east. And that's what we're talking about is the attenuation zone. So if you think of a circle or thereabouts a circle, and that would be our waste footprint. And that's what we are allowed to kind of fill. And we're restricted by. And then the attenuation zone is basically the just in case zone. As we contaminate, we can contaminate into that area, but as long as we own it, and we follow the general use guidelines, then we're okay. And that's where you get into the narrow part, and it does kind of funnel into this area, which we do plan on putting a berm in to kind of contain the water on our site longer. And the longer you contain it is the more you'll capture from just from it settling. So you reduce the potential for any you reduce the potential for waste leaving. So that being said, we've got a very small landfill that's used low volume. We've got a low population and low volume, and we're looked at under that kind of microscope. Our certificate of approval is very simple and very old, and we are located on M&R lands. So put all that together, the risk is rather low when the MOE looks at it. So we do have the report does indicate that the landfill is not causing unacceptable impact on the surrounding land. So that's important to notice. The other thing is the grinding operations that have been completed. They do paint a picture that we dramatically reduced the volume that we're putting into the landfill. We've also been working at squaring up, making regular geometric shapes in our footprint, so it's easier to survey and get better numbers. And that's the key here, is you want good information going forward to make decisions. So if we can make it easier for our people surveyors out there to actually do the math and get us good numbers, you're going to see better information back. But you see a dramatic drop in the volume just because of our grinding, which is a great story here. That well that we're talking about, there's been if it's not required and it's in the middle of the footprint, it doesn't really offer paint much of a picture. Really, what you want to do when you look at these wells is you want to compare what you are to the existing area. So if you look upstream and say upstream, this is what is naturally occurring. This are natural levels upstream away from our garbage footprint. And then we look downstream and down gradient of where the groundwater flows, and then we look at those areas, and we look further down. So there's a few spots. So you're going to look closer to the footprint down the low side, so to the east, and you're gonna look further down over towards you get to the property lines. And that's really gonna paint a picture of how fast it's moving and what do you have? What is in that water column or what is in that contamination? Does it meet the general use permits? We do. So we're generally in compliance now and there's no concern going forward. But there's a good point in saying that we are small and we have the capacity for small amounts of waste to come in there. As it stands right now, it's not going to be any great area that we can take on without making some changes. So to answer the questions that we have, I've contacted our consultant and requested that going forward, they put together options where we are with our landfills, both York and Alds. And going forward, what we can look at for how much we have, how many years of capacity we have left in each, and what are our options going forward in each one, wherever our risks. And this is going to give us better information going forward. I hope that answers most of the questions. There is better information coming as we go. We've been doing some very good things at our waste and landfill sites to clean things up and reduce risks and manage the fill, especially our stormwater. And I will bring more information as it does come along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I think you answered almost every one of my questions. And I think last time I was in I used the Aldsmorden York, it was looking good. Maybe if I meet up with you one day, I can just show you. I don't know if you have the sketch in front of you or not, the map, but it was the sampling water station number 5 that I had a question about because I didn't see any data for that. And I think it's just, even though I totally understand everything flows northeast and kind of out that way, I do think there is some that flows northwest when it gets kind of out of the brush pile, I'll call it. I think you get out to along the Alds Road getting across. So maybe you can just review it yourself if you'd like, but maybe just ask Azimuth if they, when they're out next, which I'm guessing is soon, if they can make sure we do have a sampling water station 5, but there's no data for it. So maybe they can just make sure if they're gathering data for that. That's really where I was going. But thank you for all your answers. It really helped. And I found this report quite informative, actually. So thank you,
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I do have a meeting. We are having sampling in the next couple of weeks with our consultant, and I will bring those that concern up, and we'll definitely deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or comments? If not, then I guess I will ask our CAO to call the roll so we can receive this report for information.
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
So finally, for this section, we have a report on an update on buildings from our Building Services Department and building permit activity from January 1st to March 31st of this year. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receive report BLDG 2023-02 entitled Building Services Update and Building Permit Activity for January 1st to March 31st, 2023 for information. Who would like to move and second that?
I can move that, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Seconder?
I can second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. Any discussion on this report?
Thanks very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our CBO couldn't be here tonight, but he felt it was important that I bring to council's attention that he is working hard on closing building permits. And if you see from his report, he has closed 65 building permit files and is working on more. So he's making some progress. He made some good progress over the winter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Good report. Any other questions or comments?
I have one if I might, Mr. Mayor. I don't think Jamie's on the call tonight, but I
No.
did actually have that highlight. I thought it was great when I saw 65 building permits between January 1st and March 31st closed. So I think that's great. The one thing and I'm not sure we'll know, but maybe staff can get back to council or the public on it. It says from January 1st to March 31st, the municipality received a total of 18 building permit applications, which is down 14 from the same period. And I noticed it says there was just over $1 million in financial considerations, 1,075,000 of construction value awarded. I'm just wondering, I'm assuming the construction value is down, which I totally understand given the economy, but I'm guessing overall the building permit revenue would be down, just given the fewer applications. It's really just a question. Maybe at the next quarterly report, they can just get back to us and let us know how it compared to last year from a construction value or permit issued value. That's all. But great to see all the permits closed. I think that's fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, Madam CAO, would you call the roll again, please?
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, in section 10, we have some bylaws. And the first one is a bylaw to appoint an alternate bylaw enforcement officer, which we, I think, discussed at a previous meeting, but didn't, I don't know whether we didn't have the bylaw or just, anyway. We need a mover and seconder that bylaw number 30-22, being a bylaw to appoint an alternate bylaw enforcement officer, be read a first and second time this second day of May 2023, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this second day of May 2023, and numbered 30-2023. I'm sorry, I said the.
I'll
first-
move it. I'll
Steve,
move it.
There's some, all right. This is moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
all right, thank you, Councillor Bray. I just noticed as I was reading here, when I started at the very beginning, I said that bylaw number 30-2022 being a bylaw, that's a typo. It's actually 30-2023 is the bylaw number, so that should appear everywhere in this motion. Anyway, is there any further, is there any discussion about this? We have, the council has considered this before. If not, Madam CAO, would you call the vote, please?
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Item 10.2. And this is a bylaw to close and stop up a part of the original concession road allowance between lots 25 and 26 in concession 6. Property owners are Greenwood and Jennings. This also has been to council before. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, that bylaw number 31-2023 there's that same little gremlin that bylaw 31-2023 being a bylaw to close and stop up that part of the original concession road allowance between lots 25 and 26, concession 6. The owners are Greenwood and Jennings, be read a first and second time this second day of May 2023, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this second day of May 2023 and numbered 31-2023. Who would like to move that?
I can move that, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by,
I'll second it, Counselor Lamb.
thank you, Councillor Lamb. Any discussion on this one?
Sorry to keep asking questions, but I had a real quick question or two questions. When we're doing closing of shore roads, even though I understand why this is being done as it says here, the road was in the wrong spot, basically, so we're just fixing an error from decades ago. Did we, because we're going through a public process, do we have to let the abutting owners know or anything like that, or do any public notice? I'm just wanting to make sure. I have no problems with proceeding with it. I just want to make sure we're following all the requirements that are necessary.
I'll ask our DAO if she can answer that.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, normally, under normal circumstances, the closing and conveying of a public road allowance, whether it's a shore road allowance or a concession road allowance, in this case, you're right, there's a public meeting and there's a public notification. This is an entirely different situation, which I believe council saw the legal discussion on that at a closed session. And it's related, as you noted, to the fact that the road was put in the wrong location, and legislation allows that the road allowance be conveyed to the owner. The owner is entitled to the soil and freehold of the original road allowance and to a conveyance of the original road allowance. So we're just following through on that.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michelle. That's what I thought. Thank you.
All right, anything else about this particular item? All right, so can we call the question on it, please?
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. So the next item, or the last in this group in the bylaw section, is 10.3. And this is a bylaw to enter into a third lease extension and amending agreement with the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, whose LCBO that occupies municipal property, as you know, in front of the nursing station. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that bylaw number 32-2022, being a bylaw to enter into a third lease extension and amending agreement with the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, be read a first and second time this second day of May 2023, and further read a third time, passed and properly signed and sealed this second day of May 2023, and numbered 32-2023. Mover and seconder?
I can move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Wood, seconded by,
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bray. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Again, once again, this council has seen this agreement before in closed session. So is there any are there any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, we'll we'll call the vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
All right, thank you. So that brings us then to item 11, which is business matters. And there is only one. And it's a resolution that it was held over from a previous meeting when we discussed the correspondence that led to it, but we didn't have a resolution in front of us, and we asked council to draft one. So this is what they have drafted that's in front of everybody in your package. I'm going to read it to you. I apologize in advance. It's a little bit long, but it has to do with the mega school and a letter which the council of the town of Parry Sound passed regarding it on March 14th. Whereas the West Parry Sound community continues to have concerns regarding the undersizing of the new mega school, and whereas the incorporation of portables or pods into the design heightens these concerns, and whereas parity for students across the school district, in addition to population growth, are factors that should be utilized when determining school sizes, and whereas schools are an integral part of supporting more growth and the province's priority to build more homes, and whereas the August 22, Smart Prosperity Institute's report projects a need for 1.5 million homes, I guess that's what the M stands for, million homes across the province over the next 10 years, 3,200 of which will be required in the Parry Sound district. And whereas parity in terms of space per student and spending per student should be equitable for all students across the Near North School District. And whereas, for example, the existing high school and the schools in Nobel and McDougall have a total of 5 gymnasiums, including 4 standard and 1 full-size gymnasium. And whereas the new mega school is planned to have only 1 gymnasium. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone requests the board, that's the Near North District School Board, to provide an analysis comparing space per capita and spending per capita for students in West Parry Sound and North Bay. That the board consider refurbishing the McDougall school for grades JK to 6. That the new mega school be used for grades 7 to 12. That copies of this resolution be sent to the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, Premier Doug Ford. I gotta turn the page. MPP Graydon Smith, heads of council for West Parry Sound and the Near North District School Board, and that a progress report be provided by the Near North District School Board monthly. So that is the same resolution that was passed by the Town of Parry Sound Council on March 14th. Is there a mover and seconder for this motion?
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
okay, thank you, Councillor Bray. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Bray. I have
Go ahead.
a few things. One of them is that if we can go down to some of the correspondence, you'll notice that we have a report, an updated report from the Parry Sound Build Committee members of the Near North District School Board, dated April 14th, 2023. And I think that they are responding to the letter that came from the town of Perry Sound, because at the end of it, there is a letter. Oh, let me get down to here, to Mayor Jamie McGarvey, town of Perry Sound, that outlines all of the questions and the answers to the questions from the Near North District School Board. So when we're looking at it, there's quite a bit of information in there. A couple of the things that they are referring to is that it's the Ministry of Education that determines what the geographic area factors are when they're figuring out calculation of funding. And and that the portables, or the hexapods as they call them, are used for years when there is overflow in the school. I think that there's could still be some information that we would like to know in terms of, like, if it's how the ministry calculates the funding, why they calculated us at a lower amount compared to other areas, and so maybe some of our questions need to be answered by the Ministry of Education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you noticed that there is some correspondence relative to this, and I guess in a sense we're a little bit behind in our response when we first saw this, which was a month ago or so. I think the council of the day wanted to support the request that is being made that has been made by not only Parry Sound, but McDougall and other municipalities in West Mary Sound. In fact, I think probably all of them have supported this. Seguin as well, I know for sure. So, so there is some response being given. I suggest to you, the folks who asked for this response are probably not going to be all that satisfied by this response, by the response that is in the correspondence. Some of the questions that they asked remain unanswered, and yes, some of them involve some action, really are determined by the ministry and not by the board. But in any case, I guess the question is, what we are really doing is we're signaling to all of the other parties by this resolution that we have these concerns, and we still think some of them need to be addressed. And I guess that's the question that's being put to you tonight, is if you're satisfied that they got the message and are responding the way we want, then I guess we could defeat the motion or defer it and see what happens further as a result. But I don't think there's personally, I don't think there's any harm in us lending our support to that, even if we're a little bit late in bringing it to the table. Are there any other thoughts on this particular one? Well, if not, I guess what I'll do is ask the clerk, sorry, to call the roll.
Thank you, Councillor Bray.
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. So,
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we should Probably pass our curfew
Yeah.
resolution. It is now 7:30.
That's just what I was, to be honest, that's just what I was actually looking at. See if we're. Would someone like to move that we extend the meeting for another half hour?
I'll move it.
Councillor Lamb moves, seconded by,
I'll second.
okay, Councillor Bray, thank you. I guess we'll take the roll call.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion carries.
all right, thank you. So now we are at correspondence. And there's two lists of correspondence from one from the April 4th meeting, which ended up not taking place, and the and the April 18th meeting. Sorry, three. That's of correspondence. We ran out of time on April 4th. April 18th, the meeting didn't take place, and new correspondence. That's what I'm trying to say. There's new stuff for this meeting. So there's quite a few items here. I'll ask for a motion that we review them, and then sorry, that we receive them, and then we'll pull out the ones that we want to discuss if there are any. So could I get a mover and seconder, please, for this? Whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items listed on pages 7 and 8 of the May 2nd, 2023 Council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence items for information, with the following extracted for further discussion and action. Who would like to move and second that?
I'll move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Seconded by,
I'll second it, Councillor Lamb.
thank you, Councillor Lamb. All right, so we have items A. Well, we have items A through I, which belong to April 4th, and items J through O, which belong to the 18th, and items P through the X, which are new for this meeting. So call out a letter if you would like to talk about it. Okay.
Mr.
Going
Mayor,
once.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
sorry,
Yes.
I was just still hunting for it. W.
All right, so let's see what else. Georgian Bay Biosphere. All right, is there anything else that you would like to talk about? All right, then. I guess what we do now is we should pass the resolution now that we know what we're going to talk about, and then we'll have the matters arising from correspondence. So the only item that's pulled here is item W related to the Biosphere Reserve. Madam CAO, the roll, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
So Counselor, thank you. So Counselor Bray, do you want to comment on item W?
Yes, just information, Georgian Bay Biosphere, they're having on May 11th, 4 to 6, the Stocky Center. They're having their regional climate action plan event, and I would like to be attending that as the representative for IceCap for the municipality of Whitestone. Thanks.
Okay, do we, Madam CAO, do we need a resolution for this, or is that come automatically as a result of us having appointed Counselor Bray to that assignment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my sense is that as the Councillor Bray is the representative, that she should be able to attend. This is also of interest to me. Of course, I work with the Georgian Bay Biosphere, so my intention was to attend as well. I don't believe a resolution is necessary. There's no cost associated with this.
All right. Okay, thank you. I guess that brings us to item 12, councilor items, which is an opportunity for councilors to make announcements. Are there any?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Councilor Woods, go ahead, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I had quite a few phone calls over, I'd say, the past week from some ratepayers that had realized that we had purchased the Twist property and the property next to the community center that we call the Franklin property. A couple people had a lot of questions. Some had some concerns, and I was just wondering if we have, I don't know if we have, or if we could just post something online on the website saying that we have the properties, but we have no exact plans for them yet. I think it would go a long way with some of the people that were calling me, asking me questions. That's the first one. Another one that I don't know if we formally announced it because we've missed so many meetings, but I wanted to bring up the Easter breakfast that was here in the community center and how well it was attended. And that I really appreciate all the work that goes into those kind of events. I just wanted to thank all the volunteers and everybody that takes part in it. It's very, very much appreciated. Another one, I actually had a compliment from a taxpayer about the fact that we're utilizing the sign on the bunny trail for some messaging again. So thanks very much to staff for getting that done. Another question I had asked of me by a ratepayer was the rabies clinic that used to be held here in Dunchurch. If there was any plans on looking at something like that again. Just putting that out there. Maybe we could look into it. I know a lot of people attended it quite a bit, and I think it was shut down due to COVID. Just wondering if we could put something like that together again. And a question that I wanted to ask. I noticed it in the consent agenda, but didn't bring it up then, was the Belvedere board. Are they gonna eventually show up and make a presentation to council during an open public meeting? Anybody has an answer to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I can
Go ahead, yes.
I can help with that. I did, that another member of council actually asked me that. I did reach out to the folks at Belvedere and asked them if they were able to reschedule the open session meeting. They indicated that the answer is yes, of course, probably in June. They are waiting for some new information from the ministry that they thought would be of interest to all municipalities. It's possible that, you know, one of the asks they had, as council knows, was this line of credit issue that they're working through. They have discovered that this may not be necessary now. So, you know, the short answer is yes. And I've let them know that there's some availability in June at either one of those meetings, and they're willing to come back.
Okay,
And
thank
just
you.
one more quick one, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I noticed the other day that we have our very nice looking, fully operational speed sign at our public works yard, and I can see David. I was just wondering if there was any progress made on with us getting the rights to set that up anywhere near the highway. Thanks. That's all, I promise.
That's all right, no problem. David, do you have any update on that one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's been a long, long journey with that. So we finally got a response from MTO. And then I had a phone conversation, and a couple of them last couple of days, and they were looking for an updated GPS coordinate. We initially had it coming in, initially requested the location for eastbound near the school. But then I understand that the original concern, or the bigger concern, is westbound coming down the hill into town. So MTO said, no problem, send us new coordinates, and we can work with the application there and work with it. They initially, they kept getting us confused with our neighbors who didn't apply. So they were confused, because I said, no, we applied. So I had to correct them quite often on that. But so that's I give the GPS coordinates, and I believe it'll be a quick review from there, and we'll be able to put it in on. I plan on putting it on a 6x6 post, and if it works well, which it seems to be, then there may be some discussion adding one of these as a portable unit that we could move around to some other areas of the municipalities, because there is definitely some need on some of our roads to see if we can have some traffic calming, and this I find may be effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
For-
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Bray.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
I just have a comment to go along with that, that's wonderful. I'm really glad that we're going to have that operational sometime this year. That's great. And but I also wanted to let the Public Works manager know that information from that is very much appreciated by the OPP, so that they have information to know what kind of like timing and when they may need to be out here to be able to help deter people from speeding through our community. And I know that if they have the data, they're really receptive to getting that information. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Councilor Bray. The history of this is that we did approach a couple of years ago. We approached the district commander in Parry Sound and said, people are complaining about vehicles speeding through Dunchurch at way in excess of the speed limit. We need more enforcement. And he said, we need you to put up one of those automated speed signs that collects the data, so that we can try to figure out what are the appropriate times to increase the enforcement, because they have very limited resources, as we keep hearing anyway, and so they're not they can't just send somebody out to sit there or put their own speed trap up in Dunchurch at all hours of the day and night. So they were hoping that if we would get some of that data, then that would help them to tailor their enforcement accordingly. And this has been a long time coming, but I think it's great that looks like we're getting close to actually having this, placing the signs. So anyway, so are there any other councillor items?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lamb, just quickly, I was the other counselor that our CAO was referring to when she mentioned Belvedere Heights, because I had asked that question the other day. The other question that I asked of her was, had we heard back a formal kind of written response from the Pool and Recreation Committee as to whether they were going to do our study, which is conditional upon a condition of our funding. And I don't think I'm divulging anything. A letter was sent or an email or whatever, but somehow it got lost in the system. So, because I noticed at the last Pool and Recreation Committee meeting that I didn't see anything enclosed or anywhere else that dealt with, Whitestone letter or anything like that. So, anyway, I think she kind of had a tentative sort of, yeah, we're probably going to do, or we are going to do the study, but it was only verbal. And anyway, long story short is I understand that they're putting that, our request or our letter or whatever, on the next agenda for the Pool Wellness Center. And I don't know whether it'll be an open or closed, but they're going to deal with our letters. So I just wanted other counselors and the public to kind of know that. So hopefully I've encapsulated that, Michelle, and not misspoke at all. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I have a couple things I'd like to bring up. First off, I think we missed an item in the agenda, and I don't want to go back to it tonight. Under 11 business matters, there was 11.1.2, which was planning in items, invoices, discussion. So maybe we can just have staff put that on the next council agenda under business matters, so we can bring it up for discussion. Again, we don't need to go back tonight. And then I just have a couple things I'd just like to remind everybody, really, and let the public hear it as well, in case some of them haven't been on some of the calls recently. I'm just trying to grab it here. I don't know if it was 1 month ago or something. I think all of council were given little booklets from the Ontario Ombudsman, open meetings, information and best practices. And I'm not sure if everybody has had time to read through it yet. It's, I don't know, about 30, what is it here? About 40 pages or so. It's a little handout, but there's just a couple things I just wanted to quote from it. And I think it'll go a long way when everybody on council remembers it, and the public. And there's a couple quotes on page 7. It notes the following: municipalities should monitor and broadcast municipalities should monitor the broadcast of live stream to ensure that the meeting is stopped if there are technical issues, and should consider putting a backup broadcast method in place. And on page 11, it notes the following: all votes should be taken formally in accordance with the procedural bylaw and recorded in the closed minutes. Decisions should not be made by straw poll, show of hands, or general consensus. And on page 12, it reads, must a record be kept of a closed meeting? It's kind of like a question that they ask themselves in the book. And it says, there should also be a detailed description of the substance and procedure matters discussed, including reference to any specific documents considered, motions, including names of the movers and seconders, and all votes taken or directions given. The Ombudsman recommends that all municipalities also make audio or video recordings of all meetings, open and closed, to ensure the most thorough record possible. After meeting in closed doors, the Ombudsman recommends reporting back in the open session on what transpired in the closed session, providing as much detail as the subject matter permits. Those are just a few quotes I got when I was reading it, but very good reading. And just the second one, which is my final thing, and I just want to bring up to everybody's attention that when we're, be it staff or council, if we're ever sending out emails, that we should really keep an eye on when we're sending out emails, that it's not going out to all of council at the same time. as emails like that could be construed as group emails when they go out to all of council members and be considered chain emails. So I think we just have to be really careful on when we're doing some of our correspondence, just to make sure that's not happening, just in general. And if we can all just remember that when we're sending out emails, so people aren't replying to everybody and stuff like that. Those are just my 2 quick points. And again, if we can just get item 11.1.2 on the agenda for the next meeting would be great. And I guess the last thing is, I hope the Leafs score a goal and aren't losing. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Number 13, are there, well, sorry, is there anybody else under council items? If not, we have 10 minutes left. Are there any questions from the public? I noticed that we do have a few members of the public who joined us at 6:30, and I'm guessing perhaps that you didn't realize that the meeting had been set to start at 4 o'clock, but in any case.
I have my hand up, Mr. Mayor, through you.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Margie.
Yeah, hi, everyone. It's Margie Salegi. I'm actually one of these people that have been here since 4. So
Yes.
my question actually relates to John Jackson's report on the environmentally protected zones in the fill and altercation bylaws. I'm listening to the council dialogue, and I'm really clear on the council vote and rationale not to proceed with the fill and altercation bylaw. But what I'm less clear on is what exactly is council's decision regarding the reestablishment of those lost EP zones. John Jackson suggested that perhaps those zones are in the hundreds, and it befuddles me that Whitestone is prepared to just simply lose hundreds of environmentally protected wetlands. So could someone clarify for me what is council direction regarding these EP zones? Are they simply to be lost permanently? Can they be reinstated as per John Jackson's original? Or perhaps would there be some benefit to Whitestone to pursue some of these larger significant wetlands as provincially identified in order to protect them in perpetuity?
Well, I don't know, Margie, if anybody here can give you a sort of a definitive answer to your question. The thought that occurred to me, by the way, the decision we made was not to pursue a fill bylaw or a site alteration bylaw at this time, if I recall the wording correctly. But I think that this is a subject that might come up in the discussions around the official plan. And you'll recall that Mr. Jackson's suggestion was that we might want to, treat this kind of like a task force item or something, and have people kind of look at at what we would get out of if we did put some additional controls in of some sort or other, and it could be the reinstating some of the previous EP zones that got lost in the transition, or it could be, it could be perhaps considering some sort of a site alteration bylaw ultimately, but to try to figure out what the impact, what is the scope of the problem that we're talking about, and what would be the impact of different approaches to trying to, like, for example, if we were to do what you suggested, which is to go back and reinstate some EP zones, what impact that would actually have on how we do other things. But that could be part of the official plan discussion that we will get into, probably starting in earnest in the next calendar year. So I wouldn't consider the matter lost, and I
guess that's my
I personally hope it isn't lost. I just think it's, we're coming on the heels of a budget discussion. That's several budget discussions that are, recognizing we're in a fairly tight budget year and so on. And council is trying to, strike a balance between taking on a bunch of new things that we want to do and
I can
But it-
certainly
but
appreciate that,
sticker
Mr.
shock.
Mayor. I can certainly
ratepayers.
appreciate that, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor. And as I said, I heard your resolution regarding the fill bylaw and understand why that was made. I guess I see this as something, restating something that existed and was lost. I really would not want it to be lost again, and council did not make a resolution about where this will go for further dialogue.
Well, that's right. And thank you for bringing the point up.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, could I just have one real quick comment on that?
Okay.
Thank you. I'll try and keep it to 30 seconds. I think
Yeah.
one thing that we need to remember, Margie, is I don't think it's quite as simple as just to put them back in once they're lost. I'm not saying they're lost once they've been removed. I think we do have to keep in mind as a municipality, in order to say that something's a significant wetland, it would take research, data, ground proofing and stuff like that. And I know some of the data that was there before was just from some old air photos, and basically, oh, it looks like it's a wetland. And I'm not sure if you are on some of the calls earlier, this might have been several months ago. John said the use of the word environmentally protected or wetlands was just a term that he determined. So it showed up on a plan as environmentally protected when it was really just an area that had been flooded, some of which may be wetlands. But we do have to keep in mind that it was just a terminology that was used. And as John said before, some of these wetlands that are created by wildlife, being beavers and considered nuisance beavers on private property, might not be considered a wetland. Some of the people in the public may consider them wetlands. Some others might not. Some professionals or the governments might or might not. So I think it's a really complicated situation, and one that would be very, very expensive. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do something because it's expensive, but just all those things are things we'll have to think about. And like Mayor Comrie said, that'll probably come back at a later time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the public? We have about 3-4 minutes here.
I think Ed Can had his hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, he did. I'm sorry. And I do see her. Is your hand still up? Don't see any movement there, but
He might not know he's muted.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
yes, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Go.
My pet subject is obviously Belvedere Heights, and there's a lot of information which has been disseminated by Messrs. Coles and Carmichael, which is untrue, and it has increased the level of trauma for the people there, for the residents. Just to bring you up to date, I've now been officially retained to act for them, and I will be acting for them. And they are asking that they appear before council to present their side of the story as to what is happening, so that everybody has a better understanding and not the nonsense which is being disseminated. So I don't know what I do to get that, to get approval to have a meeting before council so the residents can explain what their situation is.
Well, I'm not sure either, but I think we need to have first hear what the report of the board that they're going to give us. That was our commitment. So
The board won't respond to us.
well, the board will respond to us. You heard the answer to this already, but anyway, I mean, I guess council can take that on advisement if they want, but if people come and make if members of the public come and start, if we are at arm's length, as you will understand from the Belvedere board, municipality gets to elect, along with others, a representative, which we did. to that board, but the board is delegated to manage the affairs of the association. So, I mean, for us to be in the position of having individuals, folks who are residents there coming to us and asking for various things, it's, there's not much we can do other than refer the matter to the
Well,
board with questions, which we
understand
have, which we have already done. And so I think you need to be patient. This will get discussed in due course when we have an opportunity, and you can attend that meeting and ask any questions that you want. When that happens, you'll
But
get
it-
lots of notice when we're going to do it.
Yeah, I hear what
So-
you're saying, Mr. Mayor, but the fact of the matter is that Messrs. Cole and Carmichael's addressed the board in closed. And a lot of the information which I've received is an out and out lie. So I believe you, the mayor and the council owe it to these residents to have a chance to speak and explain what the truth is. Thank
Mi-
you.
Mr. Mayor, through
I'm
you.
sorry, I'm sorry, you're applying your own personal judgment as to what's true and not true. And I think they say there'll be an opportunity for that, but we can't, I don't think we can act on your conviction that they're saying something that's wrong. I have no information to suggest that that's the case. So
Well,
anyway.
Mr. Mayor,
Look,
Mr. Mayor.
we are out of time, folks. I think we can take your request under advisement, but I don't think until
Well,
we.
just hold on, Mr. Mayor. We're 1 minute over, okay? And I think to cut to the nub of this thing, obviously we want to hear from Belvedere Heights. Their opinions change monthly, their positions change monthly, and certainly we have to hear from the board. But if the Belvedere residents in the life leases, which I think all of council cares dearly about this, want to delegate to us, I for one will say let them do it. Like do they do it before or after they hear from Belvedere Heights? I don't know, but they should be able to delegate. And if it comes to a vote, that's how I'll be voting, that they can delegate. Like, we can't shut them down. They're citizens, some of which live in our community. So anyway, I think
I'm
Belvedere
not- yeah.
Heights is a big issue. So anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
We can't
I'm
say
not
don't,
suggesting we shut
delegate.
them down. I'm just trying to focus the conversation around on an opportunity when there will be people there who actually have answers to respond to them, and we can.
They
listen
have the
to
wrong
dialogue.
answers. That's the problem, Mr. Mayor. They have the wrong answers, and they've been jerking
Okay.
these people around, and everybody knows it. They have the
And-
wrong answers.
Mr. Mayor, through you
I'm
all. I
sorry,
think-
I'm going to call this out of order. We are making, councilors are making statements that are untrue and libelous. So I'm sorry, that has to stop right now.
Mr.
By
Mayor,
saying they're the wrong answers? By just saying they're the
You are
wrong answers?
you are accusing people of lying, and that's not,
I never
appropriate
accused
for us.
them of lying. I
well,
never did.
what's
You jumped to conclusion. Good
the law? That's what the wrong
Good night,
answers mean,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Knapp.
You should start to act like a leader, not a good night.
Okay, you're out of order. You are out of order, and you will stand down.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're out of order as well.
Yeah, and you will stand down.
Mr.
I'm
Ma-
going to, I am
Mis-
going to, I am
You're
going
supposed
to,
to represent
ask-
all the people, not yourself.
Mr. Mayor, just in a really
Please.
quick closing statement, I'll be 30
no,
seconds.
no, I'm sorry. There are no closing statements. I'm adjourning the
Well,
meeting now.
Mr. Mayor. I'm
we
asking
will
for
have
a
the,
vote.
we will
Mr.
have a
Mayor,
mover and second.
Mr.
Don't
Mr.
talk over me, Mr. Counselor Nash, or I
asking-
will expel you from the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I am asking for an extension of the meeting, which we're allowed to do under section 21 of the procedural bylaw. I'll bring it forward. I'll
I
ask
am,
if the
my
people on the phone
calling
call-
you out of order is, I'm calling the meeting to order. I am not trying to close the meeting for time. I'm trying to stop people from making defamatory remarks,
I had.
which are
missed-
not permitted, and I have the authority to eject people who do this from the meeting, and I will do so, whether
Mr.
they're
Mayor,
members of the public or counselors. So listen to me and stop talking over top of me. We're done. I want a
Okay.
mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw and for adjournment.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
we
you're
can have
not.
this discussion another
Mr.
night.
Mayor, you're not listening to me. Under the procedural bylaw, a counselor has the right to bring forward a motion to continue the council meeting. You know this. You call people out of order all the time when you don't like what people are being said. I've said nothing tonight that was out of order whatsoever. I'm not talking about what Mr. Can said or Mr. Lamb said, but under the procedural bylaw, and I'll quote it right now. And I know we have a reporter on the phone call, so I'm glad she's there. So she can hear it. Under the procedural bylaw, section 21, a procedure required by this bylaw may be suspended with consent of the majority of members present. We're supposed to be past curfew. I'm asking that we extend the meeting past curfew so that any other members of the public can continue to talk. They've been on the phone call for 4 hours and 5 minutes, and we're cutting it off because somebody didn't like what somebody said. That's totally ridiculous for us as a municipality. So I'm going to ask if there's a seconder that we can extend the meeting for 15 more minutes to just see if we can get anybody else in the public that has any comments. And all I was simply going to say to Ed Can was he's more than welcome to make a delegation request, or he can send an email to all of council if you'd like. But I would like the suspension of the rules, item 21 under the procedural bylaw, to be voted on to see if we can suspend the procedural bylaw to allow for 15 additional minutes for anybody else in the public that may have questions. So could we see if we have a seconder for that?
I'm not hearing any, Councillor Nash.
I'll second, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
All right, then I guess the clerk can call the question now.
Excuse me, Councillor Bray.
Yes.
I believe Councillor Lamb, I believe he has left the meeting. I'm just checking Zoom. I don't see him there. Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Mayor- Thank you, Mayor Conry.
No,
That motion carries.
so now we're asking, is there anyone else who is on the call, who hasn't spoken, who wishes to speak to this, who has a question or?
There is a gentleman in the community center, Mr. Mayor. We're just going to get him a microphone and we ask him to state his name and then proceed from there.
My name's Dean Hoskins. And I'd like to know, like,
Okay.
why we don't have zero tolerance for dust up at the landfill site. Like for years, I've been emailing about that. Like you go up there, the dust is fine. People work there and dust is a health hazard. And yet we come, like last year, they did them around the perimeter and then leave the inside, then they go do all the roads and then they come back again. So I'd like to know why we don't get the water truck or something, and don't wait till June and July to put liquid calcium down. To me, there shouldn't be any dust up there. You put the liquid calcium down, whatever, and if it gets dusty, then you get the water truck up there. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you for your question, Dean. Is there any response that staff can give at this point, or will we take it under advisement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely. We'll take that under advisement. We do have a plan. We booked our calcium. The challenges we have are shared by other municipalities in Ontario is we all want dust suppression at the same time of the year. So we try and book early and get it early. And then we also have load restrictions on our road, which we have to be mindful of. So those are the key factors that to come to be considered. We are looking at given them more service than we have. Like last year, I know we did additional calcium that we did in the previous years. It's a small area and is usually fairly easily addressed. So absolutely take that into consideration. I would offer my phone number. Call me if there's concerns. But I believe the first date is trying to think of the last week of May, a Friday. I'll pick the date up here. When we'll have our landfills done. I think we're looking at the 19th, which is today's the 2nd, then it's the 19th. Load restrictions being removed on the 15th. So that gets us into the same week that load restrictions are being lifted. Actually, it's the 18th. I apologize. The 19th wasn't available, so we've been bumped up to the 18th.
Okay, thank you for the response. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none, could I get a mover and seconder for our confirmatory bylaw, please?
I can move that, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Wood, seconded by
I can second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bray, thank you. You want to call the question, Madam CAO?
Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay, adjournment.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Seconded by
I can second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nash at 11 p.m. 8:11 p.m. Once again, I guess we'll call a roll.
Thank you. Councillor Bray,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb. Oh, I realize he isn't here. My apologies. Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Woods,
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.